Welcome to the new channel. As per request, I'm gonna put together larger compilations of previous reacts all together so you guys have something to listen to while you sleep. I don't really know how you're gonna do it because I scream a lot, but hey, if you can, enjoy. Let's give the ciaphuscain video a shot. It's ciaphuscain, the Emperor's silliest clown, fighting his funniest battles.
Warhammer 40K, as you all know, is full of people that love nothing more than to make sure their way of thinking is dominant in the galaxy.
The fan base, too.
And will throw themselves into the fray over and over and over again to ensure this comes to pass.
Right.
The Black Templars, Craftful Bealtan, pretty much all of Chaos, these are the ones that come first to me in my mind, but they're hardly the only maniacal, murderous nutjobs obsessed with fighting everything until it's all dead. And of course, even if by the standards of this setting some people in it are a bit more level-headed, there's not really many people that'll choose to back down from a fight. And then we have Ciaphuscain. Commissar Ciaphas.
Oh, it's Ciaphas. Okay. It's not Ciaphas, it's Ciaphas. Okay.
Ciaphuscain, hero of the Imperium, one of the best and most intelligent warriors it has at its disposal, and a massive, massive coward. Fighting to ensure
Wait, really? Is he actually? Everybody's hyped him up so much. Is he actually a coward?
Mankind's dominance is about the last thing on his mind at any given moment. I am no doubt sure that you know this. He's one of the more popular characters in the 40k setting by virtue of just how different he is from anything else in it. Where most characters will either rapidly throw themselves into a fight or throw themselves into a fight but complain about how grim and dark it is the whole time, Ciaphuscain is going to run for the hills the moment he sees he has a chance to do so. And I can't blame him in the slightest for it. So to begin the new year, a fun video for everyone. Instead of finding some hidden bit of lore or analyzing the pros and cons of an army, I'm going to talk about the protagonist of my second favorite series of books right behind Godric and Felix. Get ready to learn about how you can be a massive coward, a selfish jerk, and the greatest hero possible all at the same time. Time for the funny man with the funny hat to be a funny guy.
Okay.
To be clear, this entire video is going to be littered with spoilers. So if you would rather not have them randomly revealed to you throughout
Ciaphuscain, imposter syndrome, the character. Wait, for real? Oh, I'm excited.
Then perhaps this isn't the video for you. I will for the most part try to keep them to a minimum, but this video was mostly just to talk about the fun times Cain had, and it's hard to do that without spoiling something. So if you want to be kept in the dark, maybe it's best to click away now. We all clear on that? Everyone good to go? Splendid. Ciaphuscain started his life out on a hive world. I can't tell you which hive world because no one knows and he never brought it up himself. And if the Inquisition can't find out where he's from, I'm not going to bother trying to do it myself. Beyond that, something you'll come to find out is that he's perhaps the ultimate unreliable narrator, and a pretty good hunk of what he says is no doubt complete and utter crap.
So his narrations are like Alfarius.
That being said, at least according to himself, his parents were killed on the line of duty serving in the Imperial Guard, and thus he was shunted off to the commissariat to learn how to be one of those gun-toting, team-killing monuments of human compassion. Apparently, the guy in charge of teaching Cain didn't quite manage to get it into his head that commissars are supposed to be assholes. Because by all accounts, Cain is a decent person, if for no other reason than self-interest. Having made it through his training with resoundingly mediocre scores in everything but sports and combat training, which as an aside,
There's actually a sport called Scumball in Warhammer. It's just rugby with a funny name. Oh my god.
The hell are commissars learning how to play rugby as part of their training? He began his career attached to the Valhallan 12th Field Artillery Regiment. The entire reason he chose to do this is because as an artillery regiment, they were the people least likely to have to actually fight anything. To paraphrase the man himself, all you really need to do is sit back and lob shells at someone several miles away. Of course, the second thing you need to know about Cain is that he is perhaps the unluckiest man in the entire 40k galaxy. Surpassed maybe only by the Lamenter Space Marine chap.
I feel there's a lot of unlucky people in the space in the Warhammer universe, like a lot of really unlucky people. So I mean, I'm curious to see what's gonna actually make him more unlucky than your typical person in this. But let's see.
When deployed to face the Tyranids in his first major engagement, Cain saw that things were getting just a little bit dicey and casually decided that it was now or never. So he commandeered a vehicle to commit just a slight bit of desertion. Unfortunately for Cain, which is a phrase that applies very frequently to his life, he ran into an unnoticed flanking swarm of Tyranids and immediately turned the hell back around. He radioed in for anyone, to start firing artillery guns behind him, and when he got back to base, it was believed that instead of running for his life, he had heroically gone on a scouting mission and baited a Tyranid force by chasing him right into a killing zone.
Wait, is his entire thing just like a bunch of like happenstance and like coincidence? That's amazing. I love this already.
He even saved the life of Jurgen, who was soon to be his commissarial aide/paperwork bitch for the rest of his career. Not wanting to admit that he just tried to run for his life, since that probably would have gotten him shot, Cain humbly accepted the praise that was being heaped upon him. What stands out most to me is that the guy in charge of the regiment, Colonel Mostru, if I'm remembering that correctly, never fully believed Cain. Indeed, for the rest of his life, he was the only one who ever had any doubts about Cain's heroic reputation. Aside from Amberly Vale, but she read his memoirs, so that's kind of cheating. From there, Cain would go on to form a bond with a few people in the regiment, including an artillery gunner who was one of the only people to ever call him by his first name, or rather, he just kept calling him Kai. This pissed Cain off, but either the guy was completely oblivious to it, or he just found it funny to annoy Cain. From there, he would soon find out that while going along with him being a hero meant he wouldn't be killed for dereliction of duty, his reputation meant that he was expected to be a lot more of a frontline combatant than he had ever wanted to be.
Oh my god. So basically the way that this is going to play out is because of what happened with the Tyranids. So now he's going to get put into more situations. He's going to keep on running away, and more accolades are going to be thrown upon him, aren't they? I can see why people like him. I've only learned about him now for 3-4 minutes, and I already think that he's entertaining. So I can see why people like him.
Feeling pressure to keep accepting these tasks for fear of being found out and executed, his reputation kept growing and growing and growing, which meant that he was given even more dangerous tasks and responsibilities over time,
my God.
which meant his reputation would grow more and more. He remarks on this several times, so to the series' credit, it never really gets annoying or too self-pitying. Plus, it's just really funny watching him dig himself further in the hole he created for himself. Eventually, he would find himself given a job to the Commissariat Command. Now, you might think he'd be ecstatic about this, and at first he was. But his reputation meant that whenever a commissar was needed for a dangerous job, the first person people thought to ask was good old Ciaphuscain. This list of crap he was put through includes, but is not limited to, several campaigns against the craft world Eldar, cleansing a space hulk that some Astartes and tech priests had a massive cyber boner over, and a trip that led to him be the only survivor after a tomb world started reawakening during an expedition to it.
Please tell me that you're going to elaborate on this. Please? That sounds insane. I need to know this story. I need to know how he's the only survivor of a Tomb World awakening. Please, please, Pancreas, please let it be in this video. Please, I don't want to have to watch another video right now. Please, 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 please.
But of note is that this little adventure of his is the one that left him most scarred out of anything he ever did. And for reference, he has at least on one occasion been kidnapped by Eldar who were likely of the dark variety. He even lost 2 of his fingers. I mentioned this little story partly because it shows how badass he is, that he got lost inside a tomb complex that was able to escape, and partly because it shows that chaos isn't the scariest thing in the galaxy by a wide margin. Because if there was anyone familiar...
You guys keep on saying read the books! It's not that easy! There's a lot of books to read! There's a lot of books in Warhammer, guys! Right now, my goal is for is the Sons of the Forest, okay? I have a lot that I need to read!
With being afraid, it was Cain, so he undoubtedly knew who was truly scary. To those of you who disagree with my assessment, please lick my taint. After this sort of thing happened enough times, he begged to be given back to a regiment to work with, because apparently serving with the active combatants is less dangerous in this setting than filing paperwork. Though to be fair, Jurgen is the one who did most of the paperwork. He was given command of the combined remains of the Valhallan 301st and 296th regiments, and they fucking hated each other. The only reason they were combined was because Tyranids had eaten the rest of the lot and reinforcements wouldn't be sufficient enough to bring him back to full strength. One was all female, the other was all male. His first job as the regimental commissar was to figure out how to make them get along in time to prevent them from all killing each other, because at least a few of them had decided to do just that. To do this, he disciplined those who were the worst offenders, though not in the traditional way of bolt gun to the face. Things like the treen duty for the next year, something like that. After this, he renamed the regiment the Valhallan 597th, an absolutely ingenious move he came up with by adding their numbers together. It fostered unity between the two once separate groups while honoring the fact they were once 2 different regiments. He kept himself in their good graces further by coming up with a tradition among the regiment of actually rewarding good behavior and things beyond suicidal bayonet charges, as well as improving morale by way of speeches, camaraderie, and other feel-good methods instead of blowing someone's head off because they suggested things were anything less than 100% perfect. Funnily enough for Cain, he brought the 2 regiments together so well that he went from having to discipline people for things like murdering their fellow soldiers, to disciplining the troops for things like lovers' quarrels and getting each other pregnant in an active war zone. Going forward, he would spend the most of his career with this newly formed regiment, actually forming a close relationship with the 2 leading officers of it. I
gotta tell you the truth, the level of depth this character has already is pretty impressive. Like, you know, we're only like 10 minutes into a video, and he seems to have more depth than like some Primarchs. Like, it's really incredible. I mean, I obviously I'll have to read the books. I know, but very, very interested.
Not understate the importance of this, because commissars are almost always considered to be the biggest asshole in the army by the rest of it. The only other one I can think of off the top of my head who wasn't disliked if not outright hated by his troops was Gaunt, and to say his circumstances were exceptional would be underselling it. Instead, Cain was undoubtedly the single most loved and appreciated member of the regiment. Soldiers would never flinch in fear when he walked by and would even salute him. This isn't actually required of them, as commissars actually lie outside the chain of command of the guard, but they valued Cain so much they happily considered him their superior. The officers in charge of the Valhalla 597th, Regina, Castine, and Rupert Brocklaw, would even regularly heed his advice, so high was their opinion of him. Again, this is not something they are in any way required to do, as a commissar's only official duties boil down to making sure there's no heresy going on and making sure the troops are fighting to the best of their ability, usually by shooting anyone who looks even remotely afraid. Instead, Cain treated all the soldiers fairly as people, not giving them all the same punishment of bolt gun to the brain for whatever they did. He never outright disregarded the advice of fellow soldiers, even if internally he was calling them idiots the entire time, instead reasoning with them and at least giving the appearance of valuing their input. He would internally cuss people out all the time, but he kept it to himself, which is the main thing to do when keeping appearances up. As a related aside, I recommend this strategy highly, both when dealing with your parents and your significant other. To avoid too many spoilers, I won't be summarizing the plot of the books beyond what I've given.
Damn. But, like, seriously, very, very interested in him. What the heck? I see why people are so feral for him. Like, he actually seems like he's not even from the time. Cain is incredibly deep, but he's not an empath like Angron. You got me. You got me.
Aside from telling you some cool stories at the end of the video, instead, let's talk about Cain himself. If you were wondering if Cain treated everyone well because he was just that good of a guy, the actual truth of the matter is rather more complicated. As far as most people saw, this was exactly the case. He genuinely cared for those under his purview in a way that few officers in the guard did, let alone other commissars. He would throw himself into the fray alongside his soldiers without hesitation, and would never be seen far from the action once a fight started. In fact, one general of the Imperial Guard was serving in the Valhalla 597th at the same time Cain was attached to it as a lower-ranking officer. And even when she rose to become a general in the Imperial Guard because of how brilliant a commander she was, the first question she would always ask herself in a difficult situation
what would Cain do?
What would Commissar Cain do? As you might expect, this view of him is inaccurate. In that case, what Commissar Cain would usually do is run like hell. The books are written as if they were his memoir.
Oh my god, wait, Derek's, what the heck? Amber King has a ton of in-depth Primarch lore videos that's filled with the book sources. I'd love if you watched the Lion and Guilliman one, especially because the Guilliman one shows the Emperor. It's called Guilliman, the Burden of the Empire. My mod who normally keeps track of that is not here. Apocalypse, can you, or Wisdom, can you guys make a note of that, please? I'd be very interested. Any content involving Lionel Johnson and Guilliman, I'm always pretty damn interested in. Thank you so much, by the way. That was very kind of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Memoirs edited by Inquisitor Amberly Vale, and reading them and taking them at face value, you would call Cain a complete coward. Someone who by all rights should have been shot the moment he put on his commissarial cap. He would only ever enter combat because not dealing with the problem would only make it worse later on. When given the choice to set out a fight and doing so wouldn't eventually lead to his death by inaction, he would take that choice every time. We just rarely see those moments in books because no one wants to read 200 pages of Cain sipping on Tanna tea and reading casualty reports while Jurgen watches porn in the corner. No, I'm not making that up, he actually does that.
What?
If Cain thought shoving you into the path of a raging carnifex would save his life and no one would find out about it later, he'd do it in a heartbeat. Or would he? Funny thing about that unreliable narrator business is that when he says he was just acting to save his own skin, there's decent odds that he's full of shit. While his initial attempted desertion was certainly motivated by nothing more than a desire to not be eaten alive, everything after that is a lot more debatable. If you take his word for it, he's never done anything not motivated by selfishness. And yet as you read the books, you will find that there are many times where it seems like he acted more because of altruism and heroism.
Wait a minute. Dude, I like him a lot. So he actually is not just a coward. He at this point it is what you guys said before. He's got imposter syndrome where he acts like he's way more he's way more humble than he actually well, no, humble's the wrong word for that. He is humble, but like he's minimizing all of his accomplishments. That's really cool. Okay. All right. Very different.
That while his public image of being a witty, selfless hero was at least partially built up intentionally by himself, it's also partially true to who he actually is. Imposter syndrome, aside from being something I can no longer hear without associating it with Among Us, is something that's damn near synonymous with Cain. It's a good time to note that his memoirs are written many decades after the events actually happened. Both due to who he is and because of the fact that his reputation was ultimately founded on bullshit, it's pretty likely that a good portion of the time Cain says he acted on selfishness is really just him not giving himself enough credit. Amberly Vale, his Inquisitor friend with many many benefits, even says as much herself in the annotation she writes in his memoirs. For instance, many times in the series, Cain will be fighting alongside the Guard or the Planetary Defense Force, and will comment on how they seem to be fighting especially hard compared to what he would expect, or how their morale was a lot higher than you'd think it'd be in a particular situation. As Amberly is quick to point out, it seems to go right over his head that they're fighting hard because he's leading them, that they're only sticking in as much as they are because they're under the command of the legendary Ciaphuscain and they don't want to be found wanting. This also applies to his skill as a combatant. Cain doesn't think his fighting skills are too much to brag about. Meanwhile, he's fought every single enemy.
I only know Ciaphuscain now from 13 minutes of content, but like, can we get like a Henry Cavill Ciaphuscain? Like, I feel like that would work. I feel like that would work really well.
The galaxy could possibly throw at him and come out on top. He's fought in melee combat with Hive Tyrants, Orc War Bosses, and Chaos Space Marines. In his words, he was barely hanging on by the skin of his teeth and only won because of a lucky break or outside intervention. Even if he's completely right, take your average commissar and throw him against a Hive Tyrant. Actually, no. Take your average Space Marine and have him face a Hive Tyrant. He's gonna be turned into Citadel brand Mephiston red paint. And yet Cain fought 2 and came out alive both times. Sure, the 2 Chaos Space Marines he fought were either wounded by heavy fighting, or Cain was just parrying until Jurgen can fry them with his Melta, but these were both Cornate Chaos Space Marines. And I can assure you, with hatred in my heart, Cornate Space Marines are very good in melee combat, and Cain's fought them twice and came out on top. If you only listen to what he says, he's an asshole who just keeps getting lucky. If you take into account everything that happens, he's one of the most competent people in the galaxy with a raging case of imposter syndrome, though admittedly he is still a self-centered coward. And of course, there's that old saying about courage being the ability to keep going even when there's more shit in your pants than there is fabric. I might be misquoting that. To talk about some other characters briefly, there's 3 I would like to touch bases on. Okay. First off, his trusty aide gunner Ferric Jurgen. Jurgen is a total badass. He's the single best man you can possibly have watching your back. He's good in a fist fight, and he's a peerless marksman. One time, in a short story all about himself, a group of traitors tried to have him killed to avoid being caught. Jurgen tricked them by arriving to where he came from.
How is Tetra Space Marine 2? I mean, I played through the entire campaign. I did a good job with it. It was fun. It was a good game. I need to play some more of it, but it's a good time. Also, I'm sorry for the video I'm sorry the videos I recommended them now, because they're on average 3 to 4 hours long, like super in-depth, super... well, if that's the case, then it'll be something I probably watch on my own. If I find a way that I can split it up into multiple things, then absolutely. But I'll definitely look into it, Derek. I'm very, very interested. Look, believe me, the fact that I want to get the Limited Son of Forest book, I think it's very clear how much I like Lionel Johnson. So I absolutely want to look into it.
From a different method to how he got there, beat the shit out of several people, and then said that the only reason he ever found out there was treachery was because the quartermaster had accurate inventory reports, and no one ever has that unless they're trying to hide something. Jurgen's a very fun character to watch do his thing. He's also a psychic blank. They found this out when Amberly Vale's pet Psyker had a seizure when he walked near her. This has helped Cain survive encounters with everything from Tyranids to greater demons of Slaanesh. Said greater demon, or I guess demon princess is a better word for it, was also incredibly thirsty for Cain's chainsword, probably both literally and metaphorically. Jurgen also smells incredibly bad. Whether this is how his repulsiveness due to being a blank manifests, or he just smells like shit, is never clarified, but you don't want to be in an enclosed room with the guy. This is a minor plot point too, because Cain uses him as a human shield to keep people from bothering him. They need to get through the smelly wall that is Jurgen to speak to Cain, and that requires a level of fortitude most people simply do not have. For some final notes on the guy, he takes orders almost...
The art literally looks like he is disgusting. Like, just look at that face. It looks bad.
As literally as an Ogren.
Yeah, they said he's a blank.
Because Cain is telling him to do something, there's a grand reason to be doing so, and he does whatever he's told to do without fault. He does most of Cain's paperwork as well, and carries his luggage, which he has no problems with. He's even been shown to be annoyed when he isn't allowed to do so, because in his eyes, he's Cain's assistant, and thus the only one truly qualified to do so. He not only fully buys into Cain's legend, but has never shown fear, because he just assumes whatever is happening is a part of Cain's master plan.
That's amazing.
Even with my defense of Cain earlier having been said, Jurgen could not be any more wrong, because most of what Cain does is by the seat of his pants. But it's nice to know someone has his back. And indeed, even after having served alongside the Mechanicus, the Guard's finest, and the Space Marines, he has said that there's no one he'd rather have watching his back than Gunner Jurgen. On one final note, never get in a car with him, or be on the road at the same time as him. To his credit, he's never once crashed anything he's driven, even something like an Orc buggy. Unless crashing was the plan, of course. He also makes everyone riding with him nauseous and considers things like cafes, cemeteries, and Imperial governor palaces to be minor obstacles to be plowed through to get to where he needs to be. And I don't think he understands the concept of a speed limit. The next character is, of course, Inquisitor Amberly Vale. Of the Ordo Xenos branch, she's very good at dealing with aliens and all that jazz. She's actually really friendly for an Inquisitor. Bit of a smartass, but she doesn't just waltz into places and scream heresy before murdering everyone, so she's got that going for her.
Okay, that's a big plus.
She's got a whole gaggle of interesting people in her entourage, and she's recruited Cain to unofficially be a part of it. Both because he's ciaphuscain and a very capable man, and because Jurgen is a blank, and that's a very handy thing for an Inquisitor to have in her back pocket. Her pet psyker I mentioned also apparently has the biggest tits in the galaxy. Normally, I'd like to think I wouldn't bring something like that up, but Cain will not stop mentioning it whenever she's around. Usually how it goes is Cain mentions he's afraid of the psyker because she is a bit of a loon, and then he stares at her tits. To get back to Amberly, her presence is in a good amount of the books as a character, but every novel except the short stories are edited by her, so you're never going long without her input. Honestly, the series wouldn't be the same without her. Her orders are oftentimes what gets Cain into his misadventures, and Cain certainly wouldn't want her gone because even with all the danger she puts him in, she's a good friend to him, and that's always nice. By good friend, I of course mean they fuck like rabbits whenever they have the chance. She has ended his memoirs early because what they most likely ended with was Cain talking about Amberly showing him her inquisitorial rosette, if you catch my drift. It is canonical that ciaphuscain fucks. She's also constantly giving us additional information about Cain's adventures where he leaves gaps in the narrative, because Cain doesn't really give a shit about the larger picture if it isn't directly affecting him. Oh, and she's still an Inquisitor. If you piss her off, you are going to be unpersoned. But as far as Inquisitors go, she's about the best person you can hope to.
I love how careful he is when he says things like kill. Like obviously not that, but like he like plays around those words, but at the same time he'll drop the F-bomb like it's just second second nature.
Be in that profession. She doesn't just kill you because you're annoying, she'll kill you because you're hampering inquisitorial duties. I never said she was a good person, just good by the standards of people who blow up planets as part of their day job. Lastly, Jennet Sulla. There are undoubtedly other characters who I could talk about more instead of her, but to be honest with you, I like her the most out of all the side characters. She's steadfast, a brilliant tactician, and all around an effective commander in the Guard. She can make the most out of—
I'm very glad my hair is covering the full word, but you can figure it out.
What she has to work with, leads from the front, and is the exact kind of person the Guard wants in charge of its forces. As you might expect, Cain can't stand her. As far as he's concerned, she's an overconfident idiot whose balls are bigger than her brain. Every time he has to interact with her, he's afraid of what crap she's gonna pull him into next. Even the overall commanders of the Valhalla 597 think she's a bit crazy. And yet repeatedly in Amberly's additions to Cain's writings, we see her giving her own memoirs of events of the story. And every single time, you get to see them addressed to her as General Jennet Sulla, because Jennet Sulla kicks more ass than any of us ever will. Cain, in his more than understandable cowardice, doesn't really appreciate that her headstrong behavior is sometimes the perfect choice for the job. And after Cain retires, she apparently rose through the ranks to become a general who won many, many campaigns. Just like I said earlier, it was Cain who Sulla would attempt to emulate in her own campaigns, always asking herself what he would do in a situation if it looked grim or confusing. I adore every bit of the novel she's in. And as a final note, she probably had a bit of a crush on Cain because—
So Cain hated her, or at least as far as he perceived it, or as far as it was written, and then she loved him. It's a cool dynamic. Everything about Cain's story arc is really interesting. Like there's so much depth in just a small bit that I've heard. I actually am intrigued by his books.
You can only read so many paragraphs of her saying how great he is before you start to wonder if there was something going on there. Amberly even points that out, so I'm not just pulling a Tumblr on this one with two characters who breathed in the same room once. To round us off, there's one story I want to give about Cain that I really like, just so you know how badass these books can be. It's from the latest full novel, Choose Your Enemies, so here more than anywhere else, there be spoilers ahead. Cain was helping the 597th hold off an Eldar invasion of a world that was once a maiden world, and they kinda wanted it back. During this time, he finds a Slaaneshi cult entirely by accident, but gets saved not only by Amberly, who also ended up there by accident after she got lost in the webway, but a bunch of Eldar Farseers and Warlocks as well, who had been hunting the cult. Cain later on shifts from focusing on the Eldar to searching for the cult's main base to eliminate them, entirely because Amberly wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth and made him help her. Valuing both his sex life as well as his life, Cain agrees. At the climax of that book, I chose that word very specifically, Cain—
Yeah, I can see why the Cain books are recommended as entry into the 40K books. Like that, he sounds like an isekai protagonist. You're not wrong. Like he really does.
Finds out that the cult was summoning a demon of Slaanesh at the spaceborne palace of the Imperial governor of the planet. The demon princess summoned, as it turns out, was the same one who wanted his nuts. He had fought her once before since she became a demon, so by this point Cain fought her more times than the number of campaigns the average guardsman can expect to make it through. This time though, she starts chowing down on Eldar's soulstone, so even Jurgen's presence and that of another Inquisitor with an anti-demon staff aren't enough. So Amberly makes a few phone calls, and the battle between the Eldar fleet and the defensive space station stops. Soon enough, an Eldar ship blasts a hole in the wall so its forces can arrive to help fight the demon. Cain initially panics about this, but calms himself solely to look cool in front of Amberly, which is just the cutest thing, isn't it? As for the Eldar, well, have you ever played Titanfall and dropped your Titan on an enemy's and crushed it?
Yes.
1, that's the most boner-inducing thing that's ever happened to me in a game. 2, the Eldar must have done so too, because aside from some jet bikes taking pot shots, all they sent was a single being to fight the demon. And then, as Cain watches what he thought was a jet bike pilot get larger and larger in his field of view, an avatar of Cain lands on top of the demon princess like an ODST. There's nothing you can do to convince me that Welcome to the Jungle wasn't playing in the background of this fight. And for once, oh sweet Assyrian, for once in all of Games Workshop's recent writings, did an avatar of Cain finally get a win, and he sent the demon right back to her. With some help, I admit, but I will take what I can get from Cain with a K by this point. Also, Cain and
great.
Cain. Aha. Funny, isn't it? And thus ends my telling of Ciaphuscain, hero of the Imperium. Of course, I ended the story with Eldar simping. It's the first video of the year. I gotta start the year off right. But I do hope...
Okay, I have to say, before we even continue, you guys know that I'm going to have to make the thumbnail that smug face right above my head, right? Like, I'm going to have to just make that the thumbnail. It's just going to be the smuggest face ever. Like, just look at it. It has to be the thumbnail. It has to be the thumbnail. I love it so much. It's so perfectly drawn. It's so perfectly drawn.
You'll read these books properly, not just listen to this video. There's a lot more stuff he gets up to, after all. There's a small portion of the Guard that worships Cain as a prophet of the Emperor. That book in particular, The Traitor's Hand if I recall correctly, was probably my favorite of the Cain books. Unrelated, but my apologies if my voice is sounding even more dead than usual. Kinda lost it during New Year's Eve. But I didn't wake up with a hangover, so I call it a win. Seriously though, please read these books. There's such a breath of fresh air from the usual 40k lore affair, that being everything sucks, things are bad, I know how to do nothing but complain. Thank you of course to my channel members, you are the Jurgen to my Cain, keeping me going on all of my misadventures to come. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there.
Oh my god, that was great. Oh my god. I was not expecting to have another character I really like just out of left field. You guys recommended him a ton. I did not expect to be that interested. Because he's been one of the characters you guys recommended early, and I kind of disregarded him. I regret disregarding him. He's pretty damn cool. Oh, that's fantastic. Also, I appreciate that one of his supporters is named Autismius. Oh, damn. Cain sounds like such a meme. Yeah, I love that. Holy crap. I might release the video for him today. It might not perform, but I might release the video because I already know what I want for the thumbnail. It's literally going to just be that smug face, super zoomed in, me with like a loving face going, type of thing. Pancreas post-credit quips. I could pull it up real quick for us. There was one that he did previously that made me like die laughing, so I could put it on. Yeah, let's see.
I would very much like to tongue punch Jennet Sulla's fart box. Hello.
Okay. As always, thank you for watching, and if you like the content, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. Until next time, welcome to another Warhammer React. Today I have something that you guys have been requesting ever since I first started. We're going to be learning about the Death Corps of Krieg. I can't wait for the shovel memes. Enjoy. All right, today we are watching the Death Corps of Krieg, Origins and Lore by Arbiter Ian. I'm excited. Let's go.
Hi gang, the Death Corps of Krieg have become one of the most iconic regiments in the armies of the Imperium.
So, like I said, I don't know anything about them, despite the fact that I've been just drowning myself in Warhammer. All I know are the memes. I don't know a bit about their actual lore. All I know is shovel.
mankind, and not just because of silly shovel memes. Clad in greatcoats and gas masks, deployed only to the most desperate of battlefields, the Death Corps are a grim reminder of how far the fanatics of the Imperium are prepared to go to keep the wheels of the Astra Militarum grinding
Are they that
on.
bad?
As always, if you'd like to support the channel, click likey, subscribey, have a look in the description for links to affiliates, or stay tuned at the end for the latest merch.
I like that he has a shirt that says "Read
Though
the Lore."
every regiment raised in the Imperium is somewhat different in appearance and tactics, the Kriegers are an anomaly, even within the great variety of the Imperial Guard. Grim, silent, gas-masked siege troopers, some of the most dogged and brutal warriors found in the service of the Emperor and trained in an atomic wasteland, Krieg is a man-made death world that raises its soldiers to be fanatically devoted to the Emperor and teaches them only to seek death in his name. In battle, their regiments are deployed to the most hazardous environments imaginable. War zones quickly find themselves riddled with trenches.
There's something insane about the horses with gas masks. I'm just saying.
Environments imaginable. War zones quickly find themselves riddled with trenches and gun emplacements as the Death Corps dig in, always prepared to go over the top and advance directly into enemy fire, supported by suicidal grenadier assaults, mass cavalry charges, and the ever-present big gun.
Yeah, no, I know he does Primarchs too. Guys, I understand that everybody always wants Primarchs all the time, but because I actually want to learn about Warhammer, I do need to learn about other things too. I do need to learn other things aside from just Primarchs.
Tons of their artillery batteries. Millions die every year across the galaxy, all in the name of gaining just another inch of ground for the Emperor, and yet they still keep coming. For their homeworld, Krieg produces nothing but soldiers for the armies of the Imperium. Regiment after regiment after regiment, raised every year, every one of them indoctrinated into a cult of sacrifice that sees them seeking only death in the Emperor's name. And this is all in the hope of atoning for their planet's ancient shame. For Krieg was not always a radioactive wasteland. Prior to M40, the world of Krieg was just another prosperous and industrious hive world within the bounds of the Imperium of Man.
I know this sounds really stupid, but like the concept of being a death world, I understand what a death world is, but I guess it's not, a death world is not inherently always a death world, right? It's not like the planet's natural environment is a death world. I'm guessing external events can cause it to be a death world, which is probably the case here.
Thriving trading hub and manufacturing planet that was home to billions, ruled over by a noble caste known as the Autocrats, who govern the planet through a council of autocrats from all the major hive cities. Despite being called Krieg, the world was far from any war fronts and had known only peace, save for the regiments that it regularly raised and sent off to fight for the Astra Militarum, few of whom ever returned. However, as well as the usual issues that plague nobilities across the Imperium, indolence, petty vice, that sort of thing, the autocrats of Krieg were also extremely jealous of their own position and paranoid about either internal strife or outside invasion. And this led to them diverting much of the productivity of their planet towards defense, the strengthening of the defenses of the rival hive cities, the building up and maintenance of vast private armies, and even the construction of an orbiting ring of steel, a local war fleet to defend the planet.
Slope.
And that vast defense expenditure couldn't be tallied with the requirements of the imperial tithe, with the administratum demanding a significant portion of the world's productivity, often in the form of regiments of armed soldiers bound for the Imperial Guard. Many of the autocrats eventually came to resent the influence of the Imperium's authorities on what they saw as their world. This all came to a head in...
Okay, so yeah, I was gonna say, if this is coming to a head, this is gonna blow up like spectacularly. Like if they're like, we know the Krieg are devoted to the Emperor, but now at this point the planet's against the Imperium. So
433 M40. The Inquisition, stretched far and with limited coverage on Krieg, had begun to detect the first stirrings of discontent amongst the ruling class and dispatched orders to deploy the active Krieg 83rd Astra Militarum Regiment to a quiet backwater planet, and once there, they abducted and then interrogated its commanding officer, a Colonel Jerton, searching for proof of Krieg's potential rebellion. What they found was as loyal an Imperial officer as it was possible to get. Jerton was a fanatic, a devout believer in the Imperial cause, and an uncompromising commander who'd also heard the same rumours.
Oh, so he's immediately going to throw his own people up to the wolves?
And was disgusted by them. Few other forces were available, and the Inquisition were reluctant to fan the flames of rebellion by deploying a fleet, so Jerton and the 83rd were recruited to journey back to Krieg under the pretense of resupplying their numbers and to ascertain the situation and report back to the Ordos. Jerton landed at the hive of Ferrograd and immediately started rebuilding his forces, snubbing the ruling chairman of the Council of Autocrats and possibly deliberately raising tensions. The autocrats knew Jerton...
Sorry, just because I want to comment on that, where you're saying some worlds are some death worlds are natural, like Catachan. But isn't, or Catachan, whatever, isn't it that, didn't people say that it was because there used to be Tyranids on the planet or something, and that screwed up all the foliage and the flora? Or was that like retconned? Because I vaguely remember you guys telling me about that when we watched the video about the Catachan jungle fighters. That like there was something involving the Tyranid on the planet, and that's why everything's so screwed up. All right, back.
Would never agree to their slowly moving plans. He would always support the Imperium to the death if necessary, and so, feeling under pressure from the army that was building on their doorstep, the Council of Autocrats made their fateful move. To the great and eternal shame of every Krieger to this day, the chairman of the Council of Autocrats, a man so hated that his name has since been scrubbed from all records, on the day of the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension, declared the planet's secession from the Imperium, placing the entire world under martial law and taking control of the planetary defense grid. That rebellion spread quickly through almost all of the major hives, and after a brief outburst of civil war, many of the other hives either enthusiastically joined with their ruler or capitulated to the opposing armies, all except one. In Hive Ferrograd, with the hive's leaders unsure which way to turn, Colonel Jerton quickly organised a coup, and Ferrograd became a rallying point for loyalists. But by this point, those loyalist forces were hopelessly outnumbered. Jerton contacted the Imperium for aid, reporting back his findings, but with the planetary defense grid in the hands of the traitors, he was informed that no fleet of a sufficient size was available to break through the Ring of Steel and deliver reinforcements. The Imperium trusted Krieg to Jerton's best judgment. Of course, the war that then broke out continued for years, Jerton often leading his forces personally. Under his leadership...
I would have assumed that the Imperium would have jumped right on this to not tolerate any of this BS.
The Hive, isolated by besieging armies of rebels, held out far longer than any could have predicted. Adopting a survivalist mentality, the entire resources of the Hive, the largest manufacturing hub on the planet, were retooled towards continuing the war, and this was helped by the presence of the Adeptus Mechanicus Magos Greel, one of Jerton's closest advisors, who had returned with him from campaign. Greel began to delve into the ancient ruins underneath the Hive City. His researchers and teams of servitors developed new technologies to help in the war, high-powered lasguns, more efficient manufacturing procedures. In fact, much of the infrastructure of Ferrograd was moved below ground to save it from rebel bombing, into a new network of caverns and tunnels Greel had constructed in the ancient Underhive. Whole cities were built deep under Ferrograd to house the refugees from other hives or the population of Ferrograd whose own uphive homes had been destroyed. And eventually, deep beneath that hive, Greel discovered a terrible secret. Stored in a vault beneath the hive were ancient weapons, missiles of immense power, relics of the dark age of technology. weapons that could destroy a planet. Officially, the defenders of High Ferrograd, Jurton and his senior officers, decided that they could never be used. So destructive could they be to the world. But as the war dragged on, the stockpile became more and more tempting. After years more of grueling warfare, and with the defenders of High Ferrograd bled dry, Jurton finally gave in to the...
Yeah, I would say it's one of those situations where it's like, you know you're going to lose this war. Like, if you're in that situation, do you take the moral high ground of not wiping out a planet? Or do you go, I'm petty AF and I'm going to nuke the hell out of it? I fall in line with the latter in this circumstance.
Advice from Majos Griel, who had calculated no other possible way to win. Heading off an attempted coup by his own senior officers, Jurton gave the order. Again, on the feast of the Emperor's Ascension, now renamed Independence Day by the rebels, the entire stockpile of ancient missiles were launched into the atmosphere. It was known as the Purging of Krieg. Within days, the climate of the planet collapsed. Atomic fire swept across the surface, hives burned, and untold billions
40K, it's
died,
always nuke.
freezing in the cold of a nuclear winter. The air was poisoned. The only survivors, those that could escape to the subterranean fallout shelters underneath the hives. Both sides suffered unimaginable losses, but the loyalists had at least been prepared, and Colonel Jurton...
Wait. It's not always nuke, because didn't Lionel Johnson want to nuke McCragg? Right when Conrad Kurz went down there, because he was so upset he spaghetti at him for making him look like a fool, and then Guilliman stopped him, right? Or did he still end up doing? I don't think he ended up hitting McCragg, did he? I know he did something, but I don't think he virus bombed McCragg or anything like that. He did. Oh, he did. Oh. Whoops. Whoopsie. My bad. Guilliman's the exception. Oh, okay.
Jurton's purge had evened the odds. But while the planetary defences were now all but deactivated, and the cruisers of the Ring of Steel bereft of resupply or command, the industry and infrastructure of Krieg was gone too, and with it its value to the Imperium. To the wider Imperial authorities, the planet was simply written off, lost, with nothing of value worth recovering. The grim Colonel Jurton had destroyed a planet to stop it falling to the rebels, and Krieg would be of no more value to the wider galaxy. However, on the planet, under the surface, the survivors still fought on. Ferrograd had been moved entirely into the Underhive, a total war society.
Every one of these nukes is twice the explosive yield of a Tsar Bomba. I mean, the Tsar Bomba has never been utilized, right? I mean, like, so it's... Didn't they say, like, the Tsar Bomba is, like, what, like, 10x what the big boy was? Something ridiculous. I feel like this is still... Even if that's the case, even if the Tsar Bomba... It's twice the yield of a Tsar Bomba, I feel like these Warhammer ones from the Dark Age would still be substantially worse.
Dedicated to the production of soldiers to keep their conflict going. Tests were conducted, finding that troopers, covered head to toe, masked, their uniforms impregnated against the foul air and radiation, could survive on the surface, and the youth of the Hive were inducted into new armies who marched out from Ferrograd towards the rebel hives, slowly clearing the ruined cities of the remains of those rebels, many of whom were now hideously mutated and living in the rubble. Jurton eventually died, likely from complications from radioactive fallout, but for the next 15 generations, the descendants of the survivors fought on. The world devolved into a planet-wide war zone. In an attempt to stop communication between the rebel hives, they were besieged by Ferrograd's new armies. Over hundreds of years, a constant bloody war of attrition waged between the secessionists and the loyalists, both sides growing ever more fervent, brutal, and callous in their devotion to their cause. The planet's surface became covered with trench lines and razor wire, fed by the bones of
I love that I have like my own grok in chat. I just see everybody writing down the megatons and the yields of a nuclear bomb.
generations of dead as the new settlements of Krieg spread under the surface, each generation knowing only war as they carried on the fight. And finally, new technologies were introduced by Greel, unhallowed ways to speed up the production and hardiness of Ferrograd's young soldiers, such as the controversial Vitae womb. Naming themselves the Death Corps, the gas-masked and great-coated descendants of the survivors battled through the rad wastes and ruins for 500 years.
That's wild.
And inch by inch, the Loyalists slowly retook the world. 4 months after the final reconquest of Krieg, the first Imperial shuttle touched down on the planet in centuries. The Krieg commanding officer, a gas-masked colonel who, after being forced to give a name, stated it as Jerton, declared the planet loyal and professed the great desire of his people to atone for their sins. In tribute, they offered up not one, but 20 fully trained regiments for the Imperial Guard.
Oh.
20 regiments of, by this point, veteran siege troopers, formed and equipped, and with each of their commanders requesting the most hazardous war zones for assignment. And in addition to this, there was an entire subterranean society dedicated to the production of even more. Over the 500 years of their war, the entirety of Krieg had been turned over to the production of arms, equipment, and soldiers. Implacable, brutal soldiers, all indoctrinated to the point of fanaticism in the...
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, these guys are actually kind of cool. Why do you guys make so many shovel memes? Like, they're so cool on their own. Why do you need the shovel memes?
Imperial creed, and desperate to atone for the sins of their planet. Initial tests were conducted by the Inquisitor Lareth, whose report highlighted numerous questionable practices amongst these new Kriegers, but the Departamento Munitorum, stretched for reinforcements as it was eager to just overlook those, and so, judging the planet to be overall loyal and compliant, Krieg was finally accepted back into the Imperial fold in 949 M41, and the more controversial sections of the Inquisitor's report were placed under the highest of security clearances. After some initial testing in which the soldiers of Krieg proved their worth again and again in the most horrific of environments, Krieg was taken directly under the Departamento Munitorum's wing. The maximum tithe level was applied. Krieg's sole job now would be to produce regiments for the Astra Militarum, and nothing would be allowed to interfere with this by order of the High Lords. Specialist Adeptus Mechanicus delegations were sent to speed up the production of corpsmen yet again. Dozens of oversized regiments would be raised every year, where a comparably sized planet might only raise 1 or 2, and these would be deployed across the Imperium into the harshest of war zones, suffering the greatest rates of attrition, only to be replaced by more corpsmen fresh from the atomic wastelands of the planet. Krieg would finally get its chance to atone for its 500 years of heresy. Since then, the forces of the Death Corps of Krieg have been deployed by the Astra Militarum across the galaxy and have been proven to be exemplary soldiers, achieving victories in the face of impossible odds by dint of bloody sacrifice, endurance, desperate aggression, and unbreaking loyalty. Death Corps soldiers are subject to some of the harshest training methods in the Imperium of Man. Selected and trained from, let's say, birth, a corpsman, and the term can apply to either gender, is beaten into shape by a brutal regime of physical hardship and conditioning. Armies of trainees are deployed to the surface of Krieg to fight mock battles amongst its radioactive ruins. Mock battles that are still fought at full lethality, ensuring only the strongest and most capable survive. Amongst the war-blasted landscapes, new recruits clear ancient minefields, dig trenches into the blood-soaked mud, and are thrown into the most dangerous environments the planet can offer. Given the way their regiments operate, corpsmen are cross-trained in all standard Astra Militarum weaponry and equipment, with a particular emphasis on hand-to-hand combat with bayonets and...
Alright, now this might sound like an obvious question, but to me it is not. Does a Krieg win in a fight against a Cadian?
Battlefield engineering, construction of trench works and defences. For most Krieg soldiers, this life is all they know.
For that matter, throw in a Catachin jungle fighter. 3 of them get thrown into a ring. Who walks out alive?
An existence completely dedicated to training and warfare, with no goal other than deployment into the Emperor's armies and a death in his name. In fact, it's that mindset that's the most unique thing about the Death Korps of Krieg, and the most unsettling for those they fight alongside. The training on Krieg, the entire culture, enforces and indoctrinates its population into an extremely rigid and fatalistic philosophy known as the cult of sacrifice. To the Kriegers, theirs is a legacy of shame. Shame for their planet's rebellion, and shame for the steps taken to return it to the Emperor. A corpsman's only goal should be atonement, and their only purpose is to spend their life in the service of the Emperor. Their entire life...
In melee a catachan, but what if you gave a Krieg a shovel? What if you gave a Krieg a shovel?
Lives are lived so that they might find death in the Emperor's name. Their only ambition to die in such a way that their death counts for something, anything. The expenditure of another enemy bullet, the gaining of an inch of land, the advancement of a trench line or a dugout another centimetre. By such tiny sacrifices are the Emperor's plans advanced, and the life of a corpsman is an acceptable expenditure for that cause. Their doctrine dictates that any battle where their capacity and willingness to fight and die outstrips that of the enemy is already won. Kriegers are raised not to fear death, but to seek it, to see it as the only goal in their extremely short lives. A dead Krieger is not mourned or given any respect at all by their comrades. They did their duty and they got their reward. Even those wounded enough to stop them immediately fighting are likely to be left for dead or given the Emperor's mercy by their comrades.
Yeah,
for who are they
love
to
that.
slow down the prosecution of a battle? The corpsmen raised by Krieg are educated exactly as much as is needed to follow orders and prosecute their wars. Their fanatical faith burned into them, and any independent thought heavily discouraged. Corpsmen don't even have names, just identification numbers and ranks. Only their officers are ever granted names, and that's only because the Departamento Munitorum expects it. When they do have to choose a name, they often pick one from their own history, like the names of famed aides to Colonel Jerton, in honour of the people's hero. Unlike many planets, there's also no officer class or nobility in the Death Korps. Advancement is by dint of ability or often mere survival. The Kriegers' self-sacrificing nature and the war zones they fight in means attrition is usually horrifically high, and it's common for the oldest surviving member of a squad to take on unit command as the Watchmaster, or be given a battlefield promotion to lieutenant, captain, and eventually colonel, sometimes incredibly quickly. Given the questionable age of corpsmen when they're initially deployed, the attrition rate of their regiments, and the tendency for fast battlefield promotion, this means that the command staff of a Krieg regiment might be very young compared to any other regiment. Kriegers have noted that they think of those who have stayed in service for years, even maybe a decade, as being old to the point of uselessness and well past the point where they should have given their lives for the Emperor. Promotion is considered a duty to be dourly accepted, another unwelcome extension of their worthless
Not gonna lie, while I'm not a fan of gas mask aesthetic, this one looks pretty cool.
lives rather than an honour, and Krieg officers tend to issue medals or any other trapping of glory, often only adopting the minimum requirements for battlefield identification. Similarly, the general Krieg ranking scheme stops at colonel. While there are Krieg generals in the Astra Militarum, this is only again because of deference to Departamento Munitorum conventions. In practice, Krieg officers are rarely comfortable holding any rank higher than colonel in respect of their ancient hero.
Oh, that's
all of this
interesting.
can make them difficult allies to fight alongside. Kriegers do not enjoy time off. They don't have recreation. They don't seem to have any camaraderie at all. Highly insular, emotionless, and taciturn, they barely laugh, barely talk in battle other than what is necessary, and they don't fraternise with other regiments. Allied soldiers are unlikely even to see their faces. Kriegers do not remove their gas masks any more than absolutely necessary.
So, Trash, I could tell you why they don't make more Krieg games, because even though I could absolutely see them being really fun in some types of games, like even if they made like a... Look, if Warhammer was ever going to make a COD-style game, use the Krieg. Problem is that the characters wouldn't have any personality, so it would be strictly a game without story. I mean, you could have story, but you'd probably have to have like an Inquisitor's perspective or something like that.
Living, fighting, and dying in the same rubberized mask and goggles, their every inch covered in great coats and armour. Their masks are their...
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Games Workshop should get on that. Think about it, right? Just call it the Krieg War Games. You know that they have war games, it's just Krieg against Krieg, right? And it's literally used for full lethality. You literally have a Call of Duty style game right there that all the Warhammer people would love to play. I'd like to play that. That'd be kind of cool. And all they have to do is add the shovel and people will have fun. Why have they not done that? I feel like that would do well. Maybe I'm high. I don't know. I think that would do well. Like it literally fits the aesthetic that everybody always loves about like the normal warfare style multiplayer game, right? Canadians would be the best. You don't think that this would be more fun? You don't think that the obsession with like the World War II style trench warfare that people have, like, because like the old Call of Duties were like obsessively World War II, and unapologetically so. I feel like that's a missed opportunity.
A uniform, and a corpsman is never off duty. At least that's their excuse for never removing them. What personality the corpsmen do have tends to be self-deprecating, morbid and fatalistic, and they've been known to make and carry relics of death into battle. This all tends to generate quite a lot of suspicion and resentment within the regiments fighting alongside them, especially if Krieg officers are given overall command of other regiments. Commissars attached to the Krieg formations frequently have to serve as liaisons, smooth...
Yeah, not even to beat a dead horse on this one, but like even the way that the soldiers are and the excess in which they're created all lends to being like a really easy foundation for a game. You know what I mean? Oh, for a World War I style game. Sure. My point just is like the way that they are literally, they're personalityless. They just want to go out and fight to the death. They have a death game already that they play against themselves. They have great terrain to do that. So they have an entire arsenal, or like they have everything that they need. There's no writing or concept work needed. Like literally none. There's no writing, no concept work. Just make a multiplayer shooter. I actually think it would do okay. Like they make a lot, like look, there's a lot of Warhammer games, half of them are not that great. Like I don't see why they couldn't make a very simple shooter. I know I saw in chat saying people were saying that they tried, but like to me this seems like a no-brainer. I would absolutely go out there and be like, yeah, I want to play this. That sounds like a cool game. Which guard regiment is the best? Probably the biggest guard regiment in 40k fandom. Everyone has their favorite. Let's go Harkoni Warhawks. Okay.
Over misunderstandings with other regiments and perceived insults that the insular Krieg officers may not even know they've caused. Krieg commissars also experience a slightly different battlefield role. The mentality of the Krieg means that morale is rarely an issue. The Krieg regiments are morally disciplined, reliable and self-sufficient, and they have the lowest desertion rates in the Astra Militarum. But the opposite is usually the problem. Krieg officers and units can be eager to the point of recklessness to spend their lives in the Emperor's service, and their attached commissars frequently have to rein in their desire to continually advance even when withdrawal might be more expedient. Given their new status, Krieg raises a whole range of different regiments for the Imperial Guard, from tank formations to artillery batteries, but the most common force raised by the planet are their famed siege regiments. These are massively oversized infantry regiments consisting of thousands of corpsmen designed to operate as a battering ram, first by besieging and entrenching themselves around the enemy, and then by going over the top as a human wave, battering themselves against prepared positions until a breakthrough is eventually achieved. The fundamental doctrine of the siege regiments is to push forward at all costs once committed, heedless of casualties, until either their position is achieved or the attack called off by high command. To support this, the siege regiments are often deployed with massed artillery formations, providing cover for their attacks, or designed to soften up the enemy positions ahead of the big push. Kriegers make use of emplaced artillery far more than many other Imperial Guard regiments. Whole batteries of Earthshaker or Medusa trailers frequently deployed into the trenches. Their method of advance also sees them preferring specially modified and heavier forms of transport and armour. Krieg regiments tend to dislike the lightly armed Chimera transport and prefer far larger vehicles like the Gorgon, an assault boat that can deploy far more corpsmen and is durable enough to survive the grind across no man's land. Similarly, while the Kriegers do deploy Liman Rust squadrons, they tend to be of the fully environmentally sealed Mars pattern, and they field a great number of heavier tanks, from super heavies like the Baneblade to the lighter, more maintenance-friendly Macarius battle tanks. There are even homegrown marks of vehicle developed by the Kriegers during their civil war that still occasionally see service in the sea.
I don't even remember what I was saying when I muted. I don't even remember what I was saying. I was saying something along the lines of... I probably was still rambling about the game. My bad. My bad.
These regiments, preferred for their simple construction, such as the light Siegfried scout tank and the massive slab-sided mobile fortress that is the Ragnarok heavy tank. In addition to those standard siege regiments, the Death Korps of Krieg have a few specialised formations that differ slightly from their regular Astra Militarum counterparts. Krieg regiments, like many regiments, use grenadier units, heavily armed veteran warriors, but rather than the infiltrators or special forces like drop troopers of say, the Cadian Kazakin or the Militarum Tempestus Scions, Krieg grenadiers are utilised as heavy line breakers.
Hey, I feel called out right now. I see you guys.
Promoted from the survivors of decimated squads, Krieg Grenadiers consider themselves to have lived too long already.
I hate this gas mask so much. I hate the fact that it looks like it's a fucking skull that is deep-throating something. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Already marked.
And now you can't unsee it. Now you can't unsee it. Because now you're going to see this and all you're going to see is the suck mask.
In the service of the Emperor, and to represent this, their gas masks are augmented with a death's head. They're given additional carapace plating over their regular uniforms and armed with heavy hellgun packs, and then used as the leading edge of an assault, deploying via fast-moving Centaur carriers to smash emplacements and assault key enemy points or to distract from the main attack. As could be expected, fatality rates amongst grenadiers are incredibly high, and their veteran status might only have been earned after a few months on the line, but it's still considered a high honour to be assigned to their ranks. The Krieg also make use of heavy cavalry in the form of their vaunted Death Rider squadrons. Although these are superficially similar to the Rough Riders used elsewhere in the Guard, the Death Riders are used very differently, partly because of their mounts, the Krieg steeds. Genetically modified from regular horses long ago during Krieg's Civil War, the Krieg steed is an engineered weapon capable of incredible levels of endurance and environmental tolerance. Bred with additional biosculpted organs, subdermal armour, and an implanted drug injection system, their steeds are larger, faster, and way more aggressive than regular horses, and their engineered hooves allow them to cross much more difficult terrain than many other Rough Rider formations. Their riders are chosen from those rare Kriegers that show some aptitude for independent thought and are armed with sabres, pistols, and the standard explosive hunting lances, and it's common for Krieg officers to be drawn from the ranks of their survivors. Death Rider squadrons are used for reconnaissance and scouting, like many other Rough Rider formations, but they're also used in mass cavalry charges as heavy linebreaker units. One other difference in the standard Death Corps platoon is their lack of battlefield medics. All regular corpsmen are trained in the very basics of first aid, the very basics, but beyond that, the job of dealing with casualties and the wounded is handled by the position of quartermaster. These troopers are drawn from the most fanatical and faithful of the corpsmen, and it's their job to administer the Emperor's mercy to any soldier who suffers wounds that leave them unable to...
So there's no medics, we just have the headsman. Oh my god! Oh my god!
Advance with their squad, and also to reclaim their clothing, weapons, and equipment for use by future recruits. The lives of the Death Corps might be spent for minimal gains, but the wartime mindset of Krieg considers the reclamation of working equipment to be of way higher importance. And finally, the Kriegers are also rightly famed for the quality of their siege engineers. All corpsmen are trained in basic battlefield engineering, trench and dugout construction and the like, but those with an aptitude for this are assigned to the Engineers Corps, specialists in deep mining and underground construction. Krieg engineers build shafts, tunnels and saps underneath enemy lines and underneath enemy fortifications. A horrifically dangerous job fighting in the claustrophobic confines of subterranean tunnels. They're armed and armoured for this. They often carry short-range shotguns and gas grenades and shells, and come equipped with specialist auspexes, melter charges and digging equipment. Their support crews might carry mole launchers, tunneling their explosive charges through to enemy trenches.
Ooh.
Or for deep infiltration, the engineers are experts in the use of equipment like the Hades breaching drill, a boring machine used to cut through the last few yards of a tunnel, allowing an engineer force to storm enemy underground positions with the element of surprise on their side. With their particular...
Okay, let's be real. You're not going to have the element of surprise if you hear that thing.
Preferences and skills, the Death Corps of Krieg are one of the most useful tools that the Imperium has relatively recently found at its disposal. An entire world of willing sacrifices, so deeply indoctrinated they can be deployed to any battlefront, any war zone, and be relied upon to fight the hardest without need for honour or recognition. To those they fight alongside, they might be faceless automatons, so indoctrinated they have no experience of what they're fighting for, barely relatable as fellow humans, but for the High Lords of Terror and the desperate requisitioners of the Departmentum Unitorum, they're model soldiers, the ideal of what an Imperial Guard regiment should be. And it's interesting to compare them to the other regiments of the game, both in-world...
I'm gonna be real. I think they're a lot cooler than the Cadians. Like, they're a lot cooler than the Cadians.
And, like, off-screen. The Death Corps originally started life as an alternate colour scheme for the Armageddon Steel Legion range. They pop up in this early photo, and then again in the 3rd edition Imperial Guard Codex here. The Steel Legion were released at the end of the 90s as the last in a series of guard regiments that were all themed around various 20th century armies, or rather themed around the gung-ho stereotypes of 20th century armies, the sort you might find in action movies or comic books. But at the start of the 2000s, there was a little bit of a split in how these old metal regiments should be continued. On one hand, with the advent of multi-part plastic sets, the Cadians and the Catachans both became the iconic poster regiments for the Imperial Guard in the main game. In fact, the Cadians were turned into something a bit like the Ultramarines, the most heroic, most professional, most emulated regiment in the entire Astra Militarum. But around the same time, Forge World was beginning its Imperial Armour series, which took a much darker, much more historically realistic look at 40k, and it was in the 4th Imperial Armour book, The Siege of Vrax, that the Death Corps returned, now as a full resin range, obviously inspired by the battle.
I'm not gonna lie, these are from 4th edition? These look fantastic for old models. These are old models? They look really good.
Fields of World War I, and it's here that much of their lore was introduced. And it almost reads as a dark mirror to those poster regiments, one influenced less by the action-packed stories of wartime and more by the realities of it. And Forge World didn't just stop at making them look like real soldiers. Their uniform and tactics might be references to the First World War, but the thing that really makes the Krieg horrifically believable is their beliefs.
All right, really dumb question. What makes a Forge World model different? I actually don't know. I've heard that it's always thrown around, but I've never really given it much thought.
The Cult of Sacrifice, a named rule for the Krieg in many versions of the game, is a reference to a real-world phenomenon, the propagandized way various countries tried to motivate their soldiers in the world wars by encouraging the veneration of martyrdom and the act of dying for the cause, and by promoting the idea that it would be shameful for a soldier to try and do anything else. Cults of sacrifice in wartime are suicide cults, and the Krieg are exactly that. A population radicalized by shame and kept that way by an Imperium that finds it useful.
This is diabolical!
So useful that it's willing to bend a lot of rules to keep them around. That shame isn't just for the official reason, the turning of their world against the Imperium, but also for the way in which it was handled by a commander who would rather murder an entire planet than see it rebel. As Steve Lyons writes in Krieg, perhaps deep down they also felt it easier to proceed as if Colonel Jerton hadn't left them, just to follow the path he had set out for them. That way, the weight of his choices could rest upon his memory alone. None of them would be culpable. And that's what all that depersonalization's for. Kriegers have no names, no faces, and an extreme reluctance to be identified as an individual. Just keep your head down, never admit anything, and die as quickly as possible. It's the only way out. The only way to go with honor. As usual with 40k, it's an exaggerated version.
Forge World is a special boutique website for super high quality, super powerful, and super expensive 40k models, unavailable from retailers, only through the website. It's where Titans come from. But now, are those like... I don't really know like the rules when it comes to the board game, right? Or the collection aspect. Because like, I just get mine from Games Workshop, like as you guys know, from the ones that I build. It's like is it that you can't have proxies? Like that's kind of the impression I've gotten if you play on the tabletop. Like, can you not have proxies? And if that's the case, is the Forge World like official, or is it technically a proxy? Also, thank you, Warboss, and thank you, Zenith. Citadel's is GW's main design studio. Forge World is a separate boutique designer that works in small runs of resin minis. Internal politics and budget attrition have kept them from cooperating. Oh, so they don't work together. So using Forge World is... You could have proxies in casual, but like in an official sense, you can't use Forge World then? Like in an official capacity? Huh.
Of a real world thing, but it's not that exaggerated. Of course, as the years went on, some of this gritty realism was also added to those main poster factions too. Even in World, the idea of those heroic professional Cadians has been shown to be
lots of shovels, and wait, more shovels. Yes, thank you, Soul.
A bit of a myth. That planet, before its destruction, had its nobles placing their own children in safe or glorious roles, its profiteering and black markets running under the surface, just like you might expect of a real wartime economy. Nowadays, both the Cadians and the Krieg have their dark themes drawn from real-life wars. Ultimately, though, I think it's the Death Corps that feel more true to 40k. The Kriegers epitomise one of the things 40k does best, why it works so well as a generally anti-war war game.
Wait, Forge World is dead? I didn't know that.
They're another faction, just like Space Marines, that on the surface, a newcomer might think are badass or cool, until they read even slightly further than the cover art, go slightly deeper than the silly memes, and realise just how horrific and desperate and depressingly realistic an idea the Death Corps of Krieg actually are. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Ian, that was great!
Well, that was jolly. If you'd like other videos just like this, there'll be one popping up on the right in a second. But in the meantime, if you'd like to support the channel, there are loads of ways you can do it. You can like and subscribe.
All right, that was great. I loved it. That was way better than I expected. Not because it was Ian. Ian makes good content. No, but I didn't expect I was going to like the Krieg so much. They're cool. They're cool. They're a lot cooler than I thought they would be. As always, thank you for watching, and if you like the content, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. Until next time, welcome to another Warhammer React. Today we're going to be deep diving a little bit further into Roboute Guilliman. Roboute Guilliman. Enjoy. First up, we are going to be watching Pancreas's video on Roboute Guilliman, the greatest Primarch. I love my accountant.
There are many chapters of Space Marines in the Warhammer 40k galaxy. Each of them is unique in their own way, for better or worse. For better, you have the Blood Raven's heroism in the face of constant treachery and hardship, as well as rampant kleptomania. Or the Lamentor's unflinching resolve in spite of the universe doing its best to step on them at every given opportunity. For worse, you have the Blood Angels, who, while quite noble and cultured, have a tendency to evolve into rage monsters every now and then. Or the Space Wolves in general.
Okay, but don't we all have the tendency to become rage monsters? Don't we all have the tendency to be rage monsters? Come on. Come on.
General, the Viking LARPers are worse in every regard. There is
Okay.
no better. But everything needs a default, something to look at and recognize as being the average, the standard metric by which all others are compared to. And as far as Space Marines go, this would be the Ultramarines. Not excelling at anything but good at everything, they're more or less the golden standard of the Adeptus Astartes. This has gotten them the reputation as Mary Sue's, which, to be fair, at least in the older days of Warhammer, was more than well deserved.
I mean, I know that whenever there's something positive said about the Ultramarines or about Guilliman, people get very salty. People get very salty, which is kind of funny. I'm like, it's because Guilliman is so damn popular that more people even know what the Space Marines are. Like everybody knew the Ultramarines without even knowing what Space Marines were.
I would say nowadays that it's waned away, though it will never fully be gone, both due to the past intense favoritism, and because some people are always going to complain that their favorite faction isn't the poster boy of the setting, so obviously the one that is just the worst thing ever. And Mary Sue tendencies aside, all Space Marines come from a source, their Primarch, the father of the Legion. And while the Ultramarines may in many ways be the average Space Marine, the vanilla ice cream of the Adeptus Astartes, I propose that their Primarch is anything but. Roboute Guilliman is my favorite Primarch, and indeed the one I consider to be the greatest of them all.
I mean, he's
Well, I
really
don't
good.
think it's controversial anymore to say that he's become a pretty cool guy. Saying he's the best might raise some disagreements.
This actually was a 3-year-old video, right? So I don't know if this was before his resurrection, right? How many years ago was the resurrection of Guilliman? He has the flaming sword here, so I kind of think that... Actually, wait, correction. I'm going to realize it just from the picture. I'm stupid. This picture literally is from the resurrection of Guilliman. Because I see everybody there. I see Belisarius Call. I see the Inquisitor in the background. So yeah, I see Saint Celestine. So yeah. No, I realize it. I should have realized the context clues with the flaming sword. I'm sorry. Fake fan.
But let me tell you his story, and hopefully you too will see why Roboute Guilty Spark truly is the brightest
Roboute
of the
Guilty
Emperor's
Spark.
sons.
With the Emperor's foremost son as Lord Commander of the Imperium, a new hope stirred.
Roboute Guilliman is the Primarch of the Ultramarines chapter / Legion of Space Marines, and was the 8th one found by the Emperor of Mankind. Before that, though, it's of importance to note that he was one of the only Primarchs to land on a world that wasn't a complete shithole. Macragge was more or less ancient Rome mixed with ancient Greece with...
Yeah, sorry to pause here. I was going to say, Guilliman, I think, is very safely out. Sorry, my cat just bit my hand. Very safely, like, my third favorite? Fourth? Why are you... My cat literally latched into my arm because she's sitting on a bed next to me. I reached over to her. Immediately, claws go into me as I start talking about Guilliman. Apparently, Shortcake does not like Guilliman. Shortcake, why do you not like Guilliman? Do you not like him because he's an accountant? Do you not like numbers? Ow! Okay, fine.
better technology. It even had limited spacefaring capabilities, despite the Age of Strife making such things all but impossible for most other worlds. Now, oftentimes it wasn't exactly a nice place to live. They had the attitude of Spartans towards having children. If they're weak, off the cliff they go. If they aren't, it's time for military training at the ripe old age of 6. But, you know, compared
Fair.
to planets like Chemos or Nuceria, I'd take a bit of child soldiering any day of the week. Builds character, as well as grip strength when you have to fight your bunkmate to the death for the last scrap of roast boar. At least the continental crust of the planet wasn't made of cardboard like it was on Vulcan's homeworld. Guilliman was found by Connor Guilliman as a baby, who was an influential ruler and all-around swell guy who pushed towards meritocratic reforms and generally making things nicer for everyone. Unlike any other Primarch, however, he also had a mom. Technically only Connor's seneschal, which is a fancy way of saying secretary in medieval speak, Tarasha Utin would help raise Roboute into the man he would become alongside Connor, and indeed, when faced with problems, Guilliman would frequently think on her advice on how to handle the matter. Must have been one hell of a smarty pants if the son of a god was willing to bow to her advice on matters. As for Connor, however, he was a man trying to push for societal reform in a civilization that was
never a good
essentially
thing.
ancient Roman space. If you aren't sure why that's a bad sign for Connor's future, do some reading on the Gracchus brothers to see how the ancient Romans viewed societal reform. And sure enough, while Roboute was away on campaign against a people known as the Illyrians, because sometimes Games Workshop doesn't even try to hide their historical inspiration, Connor was slain by a treacherous ally who was sick of all this talk of equality, fair governance, and not holding the position of emperor up for the highest bidder. Guilliman lived at least, so that's something. As for
Oh my
Roboute,
God.
he had originally planned to murder his father's killer,
Self-insert here. For those of you guys who don't know, my tier 3 is Guillimom's Blueberries.
stone dead and had the chance to do so, but there's a few things you gotta know about the man. One, during his campaign against the Illyrians, Guilliman came to realize that many of them were willing to surrender, and therefore he came to accept that diplomacy was just as valid a tactic as the Doom Guy school of negotiating. Two, Guilliman had always been intelligent. He was given command over the Illyrian campaign at the age of 12, after all, and with his massive brain power, he realized that if he killed Galen, his father's murderer, he would set a precedent for the future, and so he deferred to the Senate for Galen's fate. This shows that Guilliman not only is able to keep control of himself in most situations, most importantly, he's able to look towards the future when he decides upon a course of action.
He's a statesman.
And you'd best believe I'll be coming back to that personality trait later in the video. As for Galen, the Senate decided that he would be ceremonially beheaded on a fancy rock.
Oh,
Both
okay,
another
cool.
historical
Pop.
allusion to Rome and something that would become standard practice amongst the Ultramarines if they found any traitors in their ranks. Guilliman himself had won the Senate over to his side and pushed his father's dream into fruition, turning Macragge into a realm where you need to earn your place in life, not simply be born into it.
We
When he
love
was found by
meritocracy.
the Emperor, Guilliman had been ruling for 5 years and Macragge had turned into quite the little empire. Having annexed several systems purely through diplomatic means, it was on its way to acquiring many more. This would become the basis for the realm of Ultramar as we know it in modern 40k. Once Guilliman was put in command of his
How much territory did Guilliman have before the Emperor actually came and had him join? I know that he was very successful, but I didn't know how much territory he actually had.
Ultramarines, the 13th Legion, and the one whose gene seed was derived from none other than himself, he went to work throughout the Great Crusade in a way that no other Primarch managed to equal. Using his brilliant mind, and perhaps most importantly, his willingness to actually talk to people, he achieved the highest number of compliant worlds among all the Primarchs. Though, to be fair, some other Primarchs had more military victories than he did. For all you fans of Primarchs like Leman Russ or Angron, take note. You get a lot more shit done when your first contact protocol is saying hello. It's also possible that upon seeing his immaculate jawline, many players willingly joined the Imperium for no other reason than that.
He was
Can't say I blame
bone-maxing.
him, I mean you could cut diamonds with this man's chin. On the topic of other Primarchs, unlike many of them, he had a damn fine head on his shoulders, though to be fair, he still had his flaws. He ensured that planets he brought to compliance were turned into model worlds for the Imperium, or at the very least that the taxes arrived on time and they had a standing army. That way, things wouldn't just melt the moment the Ultramarines left the system. It wasn't like Angron, where planets would surrender in fear of the World Eaters showing up and then be butchered anyways. Nor was he like some of the other Loyalist legions, such as the Space Wolves, whose barbarity, while at least in part a cultivated appearance, didn't exactly paint the Imperium in the best of lights. He was more than willing to listen to the counsel of others, though at times he was arrogant and thought his way was certainly the best way unless shown otherwise. For instance, Alphegon was not much of a fan of Guilliman due to his dislike of the tactics Omegarius most favored, believing them to be rather dishonorable. To be entirely fair to Guilliman, targeting civilian populations isn't exactly the nicest thing to do, but it did get results as far as the Great Crusade was concerned.
fair,
and it was
fair.
Corvus Corax who taught him many lessons about how irregular tactics and use of understrength units could still carry the day, which was something Guilliman, with his Romanesque mindset of ranked formations and the like, had trouble adapting to. Nevertheless, despite any dislike he may have held for his brother's tactics, he respected all of them for their abilities, even if he felt they weren't something he should.
You know, it's crazy. Every time I see these pieces of Corvus Corax, I feel bad because it's an episode about Guilliman, but like every time I see him, I feel like he's such a squandered character in design elements, right? His armor is so cool. They gave him like the worst hair. They gave him the worst hair. They make him just look like he's a middle-aged dad who like is afraid to lose his youth and used to be like a metalhead. So he still has like this really obnoxiously long black raven hair from the day where he was like dancing to Pantera. Like it's just really bad.
Incorporate. He even had what he called his dauntless few, brothers he felt that fighting alongside he could win any war there was to fight. They were Leman Russ, Ferrus Manus, Rogel Dorn, and Sanguinius. And with that bit about Corvus being said, while Guilliman may have had trouble coming up with novel ideas, once he found a way to incorporate something into his own tactics, he was going to find every conceivable way to improve and expand upon them. Basically, you can wrong-foot him once, but the next time you try and use the same trick, he's going to put you in the dirt. Corvus even admitted he could never beat Guilliman in simulations from that point forward. He might win a battle, but never the war. While many planets under his jurisdiction were still hellholes even after his restructuring of things, which funnily enough includes Nuceria, I propose there's reasons for this. For instance, in the specific case of Nuceria, I think it's likely he avoided dicking around with it because it was Angron's home, and while Guilliman was technically in charge of it, he probably didn't want to piss off his brother by screwing around with his home planet. Not that Angron probably would have given two shits, but what are you gonna do about that? The other reason some planets weren't brought up to snuff 100% was that the Primarchs were required to maintain a certain tempo to their conquests in the Great Crusade, and properly restructuring every planet to turn into a new Macrog likely would have required time Guilliman simply wasn't allowed to have. That's largely just me theory crafting though, so don't take that as the word of God, that's the reason for it. And even beyond not being able to fix every planet up proper, Guilliman still has a few black marks on his record. While he wasn't involved in the destruction of the 11th and 2nd Legions, Guilliman almost certainly benefited from absorbing their numbers into his own, which likely helped him bring as many worlds into the Imperium as he did. He was also one of the Primarchs, the other being Rogel Dorn, who came up with the idea that the memory of what the two missing ones did should be removed from the minds of the rest of the Primarchs, showing that if nothing else, Guilliman is above a little bit of cloak and...
Also, Azure, you just fell for the classic blunder. You fell for the bait. Wisdom is very well aware that it's not a bird demon. You're falling for the bait. Don't engage. Don't engage with Wisdom calling Corvus Corax a bird demon. He knows what he's doing. He's baiting the conversation with you. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for his treacherous ways.
Dagger 1984 style. His most colossal fuck-up, however, is likely the time he helped the Emperor turn up the heat on the capital of Lorgar's world Monarchia by a few thousand degrees. When the Emperor came down on Lorgar for spreading the word that Big E was a god, he chose the Ultramarines and Guilliman to help him burn it down. Humiliated and forced to kneel before his creator and his brother, Lorgar would come to resent Guilliman and the Emperor, planting the seeds of the Horus Heresy. Guilliman didn't hesitate in the slightest to do what the Emperor asked of him, but privately felt discomfort over it and felt that it had irreparably damaged relations between the two legions. Yeah, I don't think you need to be a genius savant to figure that one out, G-Man. Going forth, we enter the tremendous fun times of the Horus Heresy. In Guilliman's case, he was initially in the dark about Horus's treachery, and when Horus ordered Guilliman to embark on a good old-fashioned orc cleanse alongside the word-bearers, he was happy to oblige. He felt it was a good opportunity to begin mending relations between the two legions as well as himself and Lorgar. Unfortunately, it was too little, 40 years too late, and Lorgar had become corrupted by chaos by this point. On the planet of Kalf, what was intended to be a casual orc genocide turned into a bloodbath as the word-bearers turned on them and began decimating the Ultramarines. Nearly half the legion was destroyed, and Guilliman himself was vented out into the vacuum of space without a helmet. For most people, this would have understandably guaranteed their death. Guilliman decided that breathable atmosphere was for pussies and began punching word-bearers so hard their heads exploded. After that, Corpharion stabbed the Primarch with a chaos-corrupted blade, much like Horus was, in order to turn him to the traitor side as well. Guilliman's response was to punch Corpharion so hard his heart briefly stopped. The word-bearers were driven off as, despite their sudden betrayal, giving Guilliman any amount of time to breathe and form strategy means you've already lost the battle. Things after this don't get any better for Guilliman, however. Lorgar and Angron raised merry hell in the realm of Ultramar with their forces, and as Guilliman was chasing them around, a blanket of warp storms cut him off from the rest of the galaxy. He decided that if he couldn't confirm the Imperium was still standing, he would act on the assumption that it had fallen and it was up to him to carry on its ideals. Thus, he created the Imperium Secundus, both to carry on the Imperium's torch and to round off the...
Look at fucking... Listen, I gotta stop cursing. Look at Sanguinius' bombastic side-eye. Look at that bombastic side-eye.
Roman Empire references with his very own Byzantine Empire. Macrog is even the perfect little Constantinople. Of course, what happens here could be a video all on its own, but I'm trying to keep the focus on Guilliman. So to sum it up, he fought Angron and Lorgar while the former was being turned into a demon by the latter. Conrad Kurz ran wild across Macrog for a while and even reached his adopted mother, who was completely unfazed by his bullshit. The Lion and Sanguinius showed up, they all argued a bit about what to do from this point going forward, and then when Guilliman realized that the Imperium was in fact still a thing and Terra was under siege, he dropped the entire Byzantium business and helped the Blood Angels so they could reach Terra. While he never participated in the siege himself, he would do his best to head there with utmost speed. Indeed, the Ultramarines and Dark Angels gunning it for Terra to relieve it was part of the reason the siege played out the way it did. After Big E was killed and Horus killed even harder, Guilliman would help things going forward in the Imperium. He of course participated in the Scouring, the driving off of all remaining traitorous Astartes to the Eye of Terror, and Games Workshop's next big project to avoid doing any work on the old world. He also penned the Codex Astartes, which divided all the legions into chapters as we know them.
Sorry, the Age of Mythology music is so good. I feel so guilty. I literally had Pancreas install this game, and I promised him I would play, and I want to play so bad, but the new baby takes up so much time, I haven't been able to play with him. I want to play Age of Mythology so bad.
Them now. Not all of his brothers were a fan of this, but eventually he got his way. One day he came into contact with Fulgrim, and as the two fought, Fulgrim nearly cut off his damn head.
Pretend he's a
Fulgrim's
snake.
sword was also poisoned, because of course it was. Locked away into stasis so that he could never truly die, for 10,000 years his body was held in public display Lenin style, and eventually where he lay would become a site of holy pilgrimage. During this time, the Imperium would become what we know it as today, the worst place you could ever possibly live. It was rumored that even in stasis as he was slowly but surely healing from his grievous wounds. But even with this, there he lay for millennia, comatose and doing nothing as the Imperium fell apart around him. And then, 10,000 years later, Belisarius Cawl and the Eldar fashioned him a fancy new suit of armor. Yvraine kissed his boo-boo so they would be all better, and he woke up. As he awoke, he realized he had a problem in the form of a horde of Chaos Space Marines surrounding him, quaking in fear and about to do their damnedest to make sure he was killed properly this time. In one corner, we have hundreds of chaotically enhanced...
I do love this aspect of writing, right? Like, he's been on public display for 10,000 years, and the Chaos Marines wait until the day he's resurrected to start sieging him. Somehow, some way, I feel like there was some bad time management. To me, that sounds like a Twitter artist timeline right now. It's like, oh yeah, I'll get your work done in 3 days. Literally, the day that it's due, they spend it like 4 seconds before it's due. They rush it to be done.
super soldiers, blessed by the gods themselves, some of whom have no doubt been fighting for over 10,000 years and may even remember when Guilliman was put in his coffin. In the other corner, we have someone who just woke up from the world's longest power nap, was probably a bit dazed and confused on account of sleeping off the world's most poisonous hangover, and didn't even have a damn weapon in his hand. The Chaos Marines never stood a chance, because apparently when Guilliman was asleep, he did nothing but dream of One Punch Man for 10,000 years straight. He stood up, assessed the situation, and repeated his stunt on Calth by punching people to death until they eventually stopped showing up. This time he didn't have to contend with the lack of atmosphere, so you can be damn sure he was hitting even harder now that he could actually breathe. To once again speedrun his accomplishments, Fulgrim tried to tempt him into the service of chaos, which, come on man, stop trying to do that to Guilliman, it isn't gonna work. After it failed, Fulgrim said he'd never find satisfaction from anything ever again, which if anything just ensures he's immune to Slaaneshi corruption. Yet another common Fulgrim L. Nurgle tried to tempt him into staying on Ultramar by infecting the realm with a disease that could only be cured by being admitted to Guilliman's presence, but Guilliman saw that in the grand scheme of things he could save more lives by getting out and doing stuff, so that didn't work either. He headed for Terra but was kidnapped by Cairo's Fateweaver, who bound him in chains made of Guilliman's repressed emotions. Don't think about that too much. Scarbrand decided to try and break Guilliman out so he could kill him himself, because all the Chaos Gods just want to get on the party apparently. And the Harlequins led Cypher to him to help him break free with his head still at—
I didn't realize just how many attempts on Guilliman's life there were. Unironically, I actually was, I'm kind of floored. He really is the protagonist. Like, he really is the protagonist. I mean, like I said before, the way that I see how it's going, it really does feel like Guilliman and Lionel Johnson are going to be like the tag team to save the galaxy, right? Because he's got the sword of the Emperor, and Lion's got and Johnson's got the shield of the Emperor. It just feels like they are the dynamic duo. It just feels like it.
Attached in exchange for being allowed to see the Big E. He also cut off Scarbrand's head during all of this, which is always a cool thing to see because Khorne demons can go back to the hell they crawled out of. He reached Terra via the Webway with Eldar help, only for, surprise, Magnus and the Thousand Suns to have followed them, and now it's time for a battle on the surface of the moon. Magnus nearly had him dead to rights, and then the Custodes and Sisters of Silence showed up and Magnus got shunted back to the warp. He had Cypher arrested once he saw the sword that was on his back, which turned out not to work at all because it's Cypher. The man's more elusive than a politician being asked to give a straight answer. He talked to the Big E, started reading Lorgar's original holy book dedicated to him, and concluded that while Lorgar probably had a few things right, the Emperor is not a god worth worshipping. He immediately began restructuring the Imperium, as he rightly found it to be an incredible shithole. And when the High Lord staged a coup on Terra against him, which as an aside is astoundingly treacherous and moronic, Guilliman put his justice plan skills to the test and counter-couped them and killed everyone, really. That's how that story ends. With any traitors now dealt with, he launched the Indominus Crusade to keep the Imperium from fully shattering in the wake of the Great Rift. Something I really like to emphasize is how Guilliman managed to orchestrate something almost equal in scale to the Great Crusade all by himself in a shorter time span. Goes to show how far up his own ass the Emperor's head is, if you had any doubts about that. The Plague Wars happened, where Mortarion and Nurgle decided they'd quite like to take a chunk of Ultramar for themselves, and Guilliman once again found himself squaring off against a demon Primarch. Mortarion stabbed him with a needle filled with some super disease, the titular godblight of the novel godblight, and it killed Guilliman for real this time. Then the Emperor possessed Guilliman's corpse, told Mortarion that he was an asshole but could still be saved, and lit Nurgle's garden on fire before resurrecting the Blueberry Wonder. You might say that's plot armor to the high.
Wait. He told that one line alone is something I have not heard. Wait. The Emperor told Nurgle that told Mortarion he could be saved, or that he couldn't be saved. Because hang on.
Garden on fire. Guilliman's corpse told Mortarion that he was an asshole but could still be saved.
Yeah, he could be saved. I did not. I did not hear that line ever. I never heard that line before. So does that mean like Mortarion might be like the one that actually can be like undone as a demon prince, or is that like not possible? Like that opens up so much. That opens up so much.
And lit Nurgle's garden on fire before resurrecting the Blueberry Wonder. You might say that's plot armor to the highest degree. To that, I say that every single demon of chaos, as well as at least a few traitor marines, have the ability to resurrect themselves as well. It's not plot armor, it's evening the score. This is just the first time the Emperor has ever decided to actually get off his psychic ass and do something other than act as the galaxy's biggest lighthouse. As for a few miscellaneous things about him in the 42nd millennium, as I said, he's been reading the Lectitio Divinitatus and coming around to the idea that the Ecclesiarchy and Lorgar may be onto something. Though as I also said, he certainly doesn't think the Emperor is a god worth worshipping, given how big of an ass he is. He came to that conclusion after talking to the man, by the way. A space marine that was in his presence was so awed by him that he found he couldn't speak, and as peasants he decided to go down to the workshop and cut out his own tongue. He's been having a hell of a time keeping the Imperium together, and has been more than happy to do things previously unthinkable, such as work with the Eldar and even pay lip service to the Emperor's divinity. He outright told an Imperial priest that he considers the entire Ecclesiarchy the lesser of many, many, many evils, but he's smart enough to know that it's one of the only things keeping the Imperium together.
All right, to comment on what you were saying, they should say the big red dork. Minus my dislike of Magnus. Minus my dislike of Magnus and the Thousand Sons. Big E would be the least likely to save Magnus. I feel like he'd be more likely to save Horus. And Horus is dead and his soul is shattered, right? Like, Magnus literally, by trying to help, shattered his travel or his webway shit, right? Like, I don't remember what it was called specifically, but the whole reason he's in the chair forever is because of Magnus. I'm sorry, nobody has personally shafted the Emperor more than Magnus.
He's also apparently been developing a goddamn harem between Yvain and a rogue trader who calls him Robu. How cute.
Oh.
Sleeping with him would probably be like trying to fit a semi-truck through a door frame, but you can't blame a girl for shooting her shot now, can you? Now, before we move on, I want to tell you why Roboute Guilliman is the best Primarch out of all of them. Do keep in mind that these are, of course, all my humble opinions, because when you say something is the best, it's always going to be subjective unless you're talking about something purely numbers-based.
Isn't, Isn't, Horus, I saw you said Magnus' soul shattered, Horus' soul's gone. Isn't Magnus' soul, Horus' soul, like, didn't somebody say they found it in one of the books? Right? Like, because I know that I thought they hinted at it or something like that. Wisdom, didn't they hint at something with Horus coming back in the same way that, like, they've been hinting with Sanguinor? Right? Like, isn't there something like that going on? Because I know, I'm still waiting for Games Workshop to do the big and do something to bring back Sanguinius, even though everybody would be upset by this. It's complicated, yeah. Magnus did nothing wrong. He was told to do nothing and failed at that. Yes, true. All right.
Be the most serious I've ever been in a video, because sometimes even I can find it in myself to have actual opinions on something without needing to punctuate it with a joke. Roboute Guilliman, for all his faults, all the times he could be cold and distant from others, actually cares about those under him. A quality that at any point in the Imperium is a rarity amongst the top leaders. While his strategic viewing of things means he's often detached from those around him,
Nope, I was talking about Wisdom said. It was implied in the last End of Death book, and the Death book, that his soul maybe still partially exists somewhere.
He will never put men to their deaths unless he firmly believes that is the only course of action that will win the day. He cares for those under his command, a superhuman warrior or not, and indeed to this day he tries to imagine what his foster mother would do in a situation such was the value he could place on the word of mere mortals. He is at heart a good man, even if only by the standards of 40K, and while other Primarchs could also be said to be decent people, few of them put it into practice like Guilliman did. It's one thing to lament you left a planet in shambles, it's another thing to nut up and actually fix the thing. He's also quite possibly the only Primarch capable of even remotely bringing the Imperium back from the brink. War is well and good, and in 40k you need to be capable of doing some fisticuffs to get anywhere in life. But only being good at war is something that only Khornate demons can get away with, and Guilliman is the ultimate statesman bar none. Not even the Emperor himself can compare, in my opinion. You need to keep people fed and supplied. You need to make sure industrial centers are kept up and running. You need to make sure supply chains are kept up and running so the people doing all the fighting can keep doing all the fighting. Guilliman knows all this. He knows this and knows how to optimize it so that everything is actually run well. Places he administers succeed because they actually perform well, not because they have infinite amounts of bodies that throw at the problem and eventually he'll drown the problem out in corpses. Guilliman is perhaps the only Primarch capable of seeing the Imperium from its worst enemy, itself. He's also one of the Primarchs who consider the ideals of the Imperium more important than the Emperor. In fact, he never considered the Emperor his father, only his creator. Quite frankly, he didn't like the Emperor, always holding against him how he was forced to raise Monarchia to the ground, even if only in private. As far as Roboute cared, his father was Connor Guilliman. But he knew that while it certainly had flaws, the ideal of a united mankind is one to strive for in this mess of a galaxy, and he genuinely believed that he was one of the best suited to do this while commanding the best legion around. You can call it arrogance, but I don't think it came from a place of, I'm better just because I am.
I wait for you and I forgive you, Big Edict, before killing Horus. See, this is the thing, though, right? Like, there has to be a point at where you cannot forgive an individual, right? Like, he killed Sanguinius. He literally caused genocide, like across the galaxy. Like, I'm sorry. How do you be like, I forgive you, you know, as you end him? Like, I'm sorry. There's no forgiveness. There's no forgiveness in that. Like that, you don't get some retribution. You don't get a second chance in the afterlife. No, you literally deserve nothing. You're a horrendous individual. I don't care if you were great before. You're terrible.
He could certainly be arrogant, but he generally felt he was the best man for the job in many cases. And while this won him many enemies amongst his brothers, he rarely if ever held it against them. In fact, Guilliman also possesses a quality almost no one in this godforsaken setting does, the ability to admit when he's wrong. When he was introduced to tactics he never considered or even knew of and was proven why they were effective, he would immediately implement them into his own. You might need to beat it into his head a couple of times, but eventually he will come around. And when shown that what he is doing is objectively wrong,
I don't want to say it, but all Primarchs... No, I understand that. They're all different shades of evil. I get you on that front. But my point is that, like, it's one thing to be horrendous to things that are quote-unquote your enemies. It's another thing to legitimately go against your own people. It's a whole other... Like, they're all evil. But there is, like, an evil that is even beyond evil in that sense, right? Like, this is literally going against your brothers and your supposed father. It's like... Everything that happened with the Horus Heresy is such a dumpster fire. It's not a bad dumpster fire, but it is a dumpster fire. And there's still the poop knife. We can't forget the poop knife. All right, back to the video.
Such as when it was
We're gonna sidebar too far here.
Secundus was unnecessary, he immediately canceled the whole thing and gunned it for Terra with all speed once Sanguinius made it through the traitor blockade around Macragge. Despite his occasional arrogance, he has humility, or at least the common sense to admit when he's wrong. Guilliman also, and this to my knowledge is quite unique amongst the Primarchs, also looks towards the future in a way that goes beyond just trying to make things better in the now. Rather than whine about the past and be blinded by the present, he plans ahead. When Rogal Dorn was busy banging his head against a brick wall because Pertarapo politely asked him to, when Leman Russ was busy drowning his sorrows in Space Marine grade alcohol, Guilliman acted, knowing that just because the bad guys were gone didn't mean everything was good to go now. While Malcador is responsible for setting up much of the bureaucracy the Imperium has now, it was Guilliman who helped ensure it could run at peak efficiency. And
I love how he's like, yeah, I tried to find a cool image of an oracle or something, so here's the Prophet of Truth. Of course there's a picture of the Prophet of Truth. I'm not surprised. Messages? Oh, okay, hold on. It's literally, it's 10 more minutes. Or it's not even 10 more minutes. It's 7 more minutes before we can do that. Is that all right? Is 7 minutes acceptable? Sorry, she's asking me about BB's medicine. I'm gonna assume that's okay.
While the Imperium today is an utter waste of lives and resources, it says something about Guilliman's abilities that even after 10,000 years it's still running at all, even if only barely. As for the Codex Astartes, you can argue that it was a waste of using the Space Marines as a combative force, that they should have been kept together as legions to beat things to death with. That argument has merit, but even if you think he was entirely in the wrong with reorganizing the remaining Marines, you can't deny he was actually thinking ahead when he did so. He was trying to prevent something like the Horus Heresy from ever happening again. He was using his goddamn brain and trying to make things easier for the future. Maybe you think he succeeded, maybe you think he's an idiot, but he did something to prepare for the future, rather than either wallow in the past or stew in the present. And yeah, I get that it's understandable that the Primarchs were...
Which one is the one right above my ponytail that's like literally split down the middle of blue and white? That looks kind of cool.
Thinking ahead like the Oracle of Delphi or some shit. If someone stabbed one of my parents, I probably wouldn't be in the best state of mind either. But Guilliman did his best to rise above and plan, flawed though his approach might or might not have been. And the reason I think he's the best beyond all others is this. Guilliman, unlike any other Primarch, failed while he was on his home planet. Or rather, he believes that he failed and had to come to terms with the fact that the world does not revolve around him, that he is not all-powerful, and that with few exceptional circumstances, he and he alone is responsible for his own actions. And like I said, in my eyes, that makes him better than any other Primarch. He watched his father die in his arms, and he held himself accountable for not being able to save him. He had to come to terms with the fact that he was not good enough to prevent this tragedy, and grew as a person because of this. Most of the other Primarchs had no problem getting their way on their home planet, and this made it so that none of them had to come to realize what we all do. That shit can and will go wrong no matter how hard you try, and you just have to accept that in life.
I like how he
Those
shows
that
Magnus
did fail
for that.
found it easy to blame their failure on an outside source, the Emperor. Angron and Mortarion both resented the Emperor for coming in to save them at the last minute. They found him to be a convenient source to pin all their anger on, rather than look in at themselves.
I mean, that's honestly really true. A lot of the Chaos Primarchs really were whiny piss babies if you think about it.
Guilliman never had this. He met the Emperor years after his father died. And in fact, I firmly believe that this makes Guilliman uniquely situated for being able to carry on the Imperium. Other Primarchs certainly had it worse than him. I mean, Conrad Kurz exited his capsule pod inside a pool of magma, for God's sake. But Guilliman is perhaps the only one who early on had to come to terms with the fact that the universe can just shit on you. And thus, I firmly believe that he's not only incorruptible, but will carry on fighting as long as he can without ever succumbing to despair. Before we end the video, how about a do or don't for using Guilliman? I gave Nagash one after all, and I guess technically Gotrek as well, even though it was like a minute long because he's Gotrek goddamn Gurnison. I should state that this will be for 40k and not 30k because I do not care for the Horus Heresy. For lore positives, Guilliman is the man in charge of the Imperium, so if you want the ultimate personification of a commander leading from the front, you can't do any better than him. If you like Space Marines, well, he's the father of about 50% of all the Loyalist chapters in the galaxy, since Ultramarine Gene Seed is the most commonly used, so it's hard to do better than him in that case. If you like the Imperium being about as close to lawful good as it can be, you'll also want to grab Guilliman. And if you like the idea of your soldiers being led by divinity, you can't do much better than one of God's sons. Also, badass bureaucrats, mostly an oxymoron in the real world, but very much in place here.
Casually
Also,
throws
look at
Nagash
his
on
model.
board.
I know GW has had problems with way over-designing their models, see the Adeptus Mechanicus, but given that he's both the son of the Emperor and currently the only Loyalist Primarch available, I think it's fine here.
It is pretty
absolutely
cool.
stunning, and his face isn't too derpy
With
either.
the helmet,
For
it's really
tabletop
cool.
positives, Guilliman hits like a truck. This is of course to be expected, being a Primarch and all. His ranged weapon can chew through weaker hordes and even lightly armored infantry with ease, and can be good for at least shaving a few wounds off more heavily armored targets. Given that he also wields the Emperor's sword, he's pretty good in melee too. 6 attacks and an AP -4 and causing D3
that
mortal
means, but
wounds
cool.
on an unmodified wound roll of 6, it's gonna put the hurt on most targets. For more armored targets without an invulnerable save, he can also just punch the shit out of them with his massive power fist. While only being
that
AP
300
-3
points, or is
compared
it
to the
300
sword's
HP?
AP -4, it doubles his strength rating of 6 rather than only adding 2 like the sword does. He can also take a respectable amount of damage, rocking 9 wounds, a 2-up save, and a 3-up invulnerable save. Just ignore any Tau railguns and you should be fine for a while. Oh, and the first time he dies on a 4+, he comes back with D6 wounds. So you can kill him, and if he rolls well, he can come back almost at full health. That is one
That's cool.
impressive middle finger to give your opponent. Of course, as I've hopefully driven across in this video, he's much more of a planner than a fighter, and that's why you really want him. He has to be your warlord if you pick him, and by doing so, you get an extra 3 command points to dick around with. So even if he somehow gets tabled turn 1, you get some guaranteed benefits out of this man. Now, get ready for all these buffs because Guilliman hands them out like candy. Any units with the Imperium keyword, not just Space
Horus.
Marines or Ultramarines, but the Imperium as a whole, can add 1 to advance and charge rolls within 12 inches of Gorillaman, reroll hit rolls of 1 within 12 inches of Garbanzo Man, and reroll morale tests within 12 inches of Gnome Man. On top of that, Ultramarines core and character units can reroll all hit rolls within 6 inches of him, and reroll wound rolls of 1 within 6 inches of him as well. Finally, Ultramarines infantry and biker units can heroically intervene within 6 inches of him. He is going to make
Yep.
sure your army is running at peak performance, and it has no choice in the matter. As for the lore downsides of using Guilliman, as the rule of the Imperium, he's not going to be participating in a battle if it isn't a major major
Is that
fight. He's
Typhus?
got a galaxy-wide empire to run. He can't throw himself into every skirmish he comes across, so keep that in mind if you're a fan of smaller-scale battles. Also, if you don't like Space Marines or Guilliman, you probably don't want to run Guilliman, the father of the Ultramarine Space Marine chapter. That should be obvious, but you never know. And of course, if Matt Ward is still giving you an Ultramarine hate boner after all these years, yeah, you're not gonna like Guilliman. Moving on to his tabletop downsides, there's a couple worth considering. You can't put him in a transport, so he's gonna have to foot slog it across the table. At movement 8, this could be worse, but 8 inches isn't exactly breakneck speed, especially if you really want him to be somewhere specific. Also, unless I'm misreading something, I don't think he can deep strike either, so yeah, he's gotta just run it across the field the whole game. Honestly though, the worst thing about him isn't really anything with his stats or abilities, it's his point cost and properly using them. At 300 points, you're gonna be hard-pressed to fill out a proper army in smaller games if you include Guilliman. And in larger games, if he goes down, you just lost a massive point investment that was probably also a keystone of your army. Additionally, his auras all requiring him to be relatively close to models means that you can't just keep him in the backline all game and farm easy kills. He's got to get to the thick of things sooner or later. And while he's certainly no slouch in combat, other armies have far better beat sticks and for less points. For instance, the Avatar of Cain. Really shouldn't surprise you, that's who I'm bringing out to compare him to. Cainy Boy clocks in at 280 points, 20 points cheaper than Roboute. While Cain doesn't buff his army nearly as well, he can one-shot Titans. If you put Guilliman in a fight with Cain, you are losing 300 points. You need to balance out risk and reward with the Primarch, because while he's tough, he isn't invincible. And it'll be real damn embarrassing if your ultimate victory plan turns to smoke because Guilliman tried to charge across a field at a pair of Chaos Knights unsupported. He's incredibly strong, but you shouldn't use him as a beat stick. He's a general who can hold his own, but at the end of the day, that's probably your best bet for using him, as a general who can hold his own, not as the end-all be-all combat monster. And that just about wraps up my talk on everyone's favorite Grandpa Smurf. I hope you will embrace Guilliman's superiority alongside me now, or at least look at him in a bit of a different light. Thank you, of course, to my channel members. You were the theoretical practical meme to my Roboute Guilliman. Theoretically, you think my content is worth something, and practically, you give me money to help me keep making content. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member.
I want to start doing this. I want to put like a little credit thing for the patrons. The patrons are great. They deserve it.
Yeah, I know it's an overplayed meme. I don't care. Eldar waifus are now canon. Suck my nuts. Give me more space elf smut.
Oh my god! As always, thank you for watching, and if you like the content, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. Until next time, welcome to another Warhammer React. We're finally checking out the original All Factions Explained video by Bricky. I've been in the community for a fair bit now, so it's going to be excited to actually check this one out. Enjoy! Okay! We are going to be finally watching the every single Warhammer 40K faction by Bricky. I've watched the remake of this months and months ago. I've been drowned in Warhammer content since. I feel like it's fitting to going back to the roots and seeing what really started all this, and I'm excited. I know some people will be like critical of it, be like, oh, it's already been remade and stuff like that, but I'm fascinated to see what the original video is like.
As someone who doesn't necessarily serve the Omnissiah, but someone who can appreciate them, you will not be getting my legs today, as I will be replacing them with various things depending on which faction we are currently talking about, to add a little bit more context and possible comedy to whatever the hell I am currently doing.
What? Is he calling the Tau weebs? I mean, I know it's kind of a thing. It's kind of a jump to go from anime girl to the Tau, but yeah, all right, let's go.
So, hello everybody, my name is Bricky.
Hi Bricky!
And this is going to be a long video and a large project that has been going on for quite some time. This is, I need two hands for this. This is every single Warhammer 40K race in kind of a nutshell, explained, a little bit of explanation, a little bit of lore, a little bit of talking about the tabletop, mostly lore, what they're all about, and also a little bit of background for those of you who just have no clue what Warhammer 40,000 is. Now you see, Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 is a universe people hear plenty of, but don't know a whole lot about. They see, oh, there's these dudes in big power armor with chainsaw swords, and they got these big old green orcs, and there's some bugs over there, and everyone calls these guys weebs. And then there's these spiky bitches over here, and I don't get it. I don't understand. Where do I start? Well, this video is particularly for you.
Wasn't he like not super deep into Warhammer at this point, or like he was only like a fledgling at this point? Because like I remember they talked about this in Adric quite a bit, right? Where like he constantly is increasing his understanding with reading these books, but he has a lot of sections he didn't know. I feel like at this stage he was like a typical Warhammer fan, where he had his niche that he knew pretty well, and then aside from that little niche, that's kind of it, right? So like for me, it's like I know my Drakari pretty well, right? I know my Dark Angels fairly well, right? And then everything else outside of that gets a lot more muddy.
Or for those of you who have a little bit of knowledge, but you're kind of curious about each of the different races and factions in Warhammer. So overall, the Warhammer universe is vast when it comes to lore and background, and each different faction is so different with the things that they believe in, and some are human, some are transhuman, like where they all have all these crazy ass electronics on them. You've got aliens and you've got the chaos factions, and there's so much to entail that I decided to embark on this project to tell you what each and every single one of them is about, and what the Warhammer universe is about as well, to give at least a little bit of an intro to this extremely bloated but very, very enjoyable world that I and many others partake in. So I will be explaining every single faction in the Warhammer 40K universe, at least all the factions you can play as, and some smaller factions here and there. I will not be discussing absolutely everything in it, because that is a little bit much. And I'm not going to go too mega deep into the lore. I'm going to give you a pretty solid overview of each of the different factions and have you learn a little bit about them, and we'll discuss a little bit of the tabletop as well, in case you were curious about that. But
okay, one thing I will say, and this is primarily because I don't play the tabletop, I even have the codex, but I didn't ever see the Drakari icon that he has, right? I've never seen the Drakari emblem. I low-key want a tattoo of that. I low-key want to get that as a tattoo. There is a non-zero chance that ends up on my body. Like, there is a fairly high chance that the Drakari icon will get on my body. I love that.
And we'll
I love the little heart. That looks great.
Tabletop as well, in case you were curious about that. But for this episode entirely, we are discussing the Imperium of Man, because that takes up a fat chunk of Warhammer lore.
Chunk.
What is Warhammer 40,000? Well, the 40,000 starts off is the year 40,000, the 41st millennium. That's where it takes place, is in the year 40,000, 41,000 AD. You're already more knowledgeable. Let me read you a quote, first of many quotes in this video. It is the 41st millennium. For more than 100 years, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the god.
Does having a Drakari tattoo make me a red flag? I hope so. I hope so. Wouldn't that be a fun thing to have on throne? Be like, Mark Tetra's body. I'm kidding. I would do that one on my own, but that's still really funny.
Gods and master of 1,000,000 worlds by the might of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass, writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is the carrion lord of the Imperium, for whom 1,000 souls are sacrificed every day so that he may never truly die. To be a man in such times is to be amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. These are the tales of those times. Forget the power of technology and science, for so much has been forgotten, never to be relearned. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, for in the grim, dark future, there is only war. There is no peace amongst the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, and the laughter of thirsting gods. Everything blows, and it blows fucking hard. Warhammer is probably the most dark and depressing universes ever in fiction. Or at least like top 3. Everything is so absurdly horrible, destructive, or overpowered that it all kind of ends up canceling itself out. It's like Dota.
You know what? One of those I just raised the Russian flag there. It's one of those things where it's like, and I've thought this before, where it's like the darkest male power fantasy, but like it also draws in a lot of women too. But it's a wild power fantasy of evil.
War
What shade
rages
of evil do you
across
like?
the galaxy. Interstellar travel is only possible due to sacrificing 1,000 souls a day to a rotting carcass of a man who you believe to be your god. Demonic gods and just demons tear open the fabric of reality on a whim. Other Xenos or even other humans end up killing each other in untold billions across the galaxy. It is a time of unending war, slaughter, and a bloodbath amongst everybody. Planets are deemed unrecoverable and are completely destroyed on a whim. Everything sucks. But that's like the charm of it. See, everything in Warhammer is evil. But being evil is kind of fun, like humanity.
Okay, in fairness, Warboss has a point though, where he likes the Green Shade. The Green Shade's like the least evil, and they're pretty evil too. But like they're like fun evil. They're like my Drakari are quirky, quirky IKEA salesmen, all right? Warbosses are just like fungal fun guys, all right? They're fun guys.
Humanity, in its own right, is a xenophobic, prejudice, and religious zealot group that kill each other just as much as they kill all of their enemies. And they're like mid to high tier evil on the evil scale of Warhammer. Nobody is good. No matter who you are, everyone is some flavor, some color of evil. Whoever you pick, you are going to be the bad guy. But that's the fun of it. Because being the bad guy is badass. Villains are cool. They look cool, they got cool outfits, they got cool weapons, they got cool armies. Villains are cool, man.
All right, to piss everybody off, this is why I say Vulcan is not a good guy. Stop acting like he's a good guy.
And when everyone is a villain, everyone is pretty cool. That's what makes this so charming, is that everyone can be the bad guy. So let's start off talking about the main bad guy, quote unquote, the Imperium of Man.
His hair, whack. His gear, whack.
The Imperium of Man is the main empire of the human race. All of humanity is under this one flag called the Imperium. And about 10,000 years ago, there was a man. He was the Emperor of mankind, a 10-foot-tall psychic demigod who led humanity across the stars to colonize tons and tons of worlds.
Actually, do we know in the books like what year the Emperor of Mankind actually like came forward? I know they said that he had lived amongst mankind for not eons, but like for a long period of time before stepping forward as naming himself the Emperor of Mankind. But like what year did he pop up? Like did he suddenly like pop up in like the year 5,000, year 10,000? Because I actually don't remember hearing that. On the scale of 40K, Vulcan's like, nah, I don't think so. I think Vulcan's pretty terrible. Around 25K-ish. Thank you, Jobo.
Create superhuman soldiers and really bring humanity into a new age. This man, the Emperor of Mankind, was a psyker. And a psyker is like a magician of sorts. In the world of 40K, there is the warp, the immaterium, kind of like hell, but sort of like a purgatory dimension of hell. And a psyker is someone who can take that power and manifest it through their mind to use it to do stuff, like witchcraft stuff, magician stuff, spells, and lots of other things, but we don't want to get too into that. The Emperor, big boy psyker. Top tier, A+, maybe even S. Now, the Emperor created a bunch of sons. Yes, created a bunch of sons known as the Primarchs. He created 18 Primarchs to have them lead all of the different legions of humanity to the different stars and plans to help colonize and bring it out. These Primarchs are basically like little versions of the Emperor. Not all of them are psychers, but a lot of them are very, very powerful, and they lead his special Space Marine legions. Then this big clusterfuck happened called the Horus Heresy, where the Emperor's favorite son, the Primarch, Horus, ended up joining Chaos and leading 9 of the 18, half of his Primarchs directly to Earth to fight down the Emperor himself. Now, if you want to know what Chaos is, remember what I mentioned earlier? The warp, that immaterium, the hellish place?
Yeah, I always loved that. Was one of the first jokes I never understood when I first started out, was like how many Primarchs there are. It's like, oh, there's 20. No, there's 18. Well, 19. It always struck me as funny.
In there relies the 4 chaos gods. Imagine like Satan and 3 other Satans. The warp being kind of
but
evil,
one of those
those
Satans
chaos gods, that's
wants to
the
do
reason.
you.
And so those chaos gods manipulated Horus, and then Horus helped manipulate all 8 other Primarchs to lead this giant coup directly on the Emperor on Earth. And they fucked up shit. After this huge civil war, Horus died, but not before brutally wounding the Emperor. And right at the end of his life, they put the Emperor on this large golden throne on Earth, in which he is now alive, just barely, but slowly rotting away, powering something called the Astronomicon, so long as he stays alive, and is fed 1,000 people a day. The Astronomicon is like the North Star.
I'm sorry I keep on pausing, but I do feel like that it actually does add a little bit of conversation with the chat too. So for people who watch this as a standalone video later, I apologize. I know some people don't like it, some people do. Now, is the reason why the account has gone up just because of time and his body is deteriorating more, or is doing stuff like projecting into Guilliman causing him to deteriorate faster? That now that he's like been like a little bit more hands-on with like these like in these like little side quests, right? Like burning the garden, right? Did doing that cause an uptick in requirement, or is it more just a matter of over time it needs more? I believe it's the throne failing. Okay. Noted.
If you want to do interstellar travel in 40K, you need to pass through that demonic warp I mentioned earlier. But how do you know where you're going? Well, the Emperor is there putting a nice little navigator right there. He helps navigate you to know where you're going. If you want to go from Earth to some crazy solar system across the way, you need to go through that warp, and then you need to know where you're going, go through there, and pop your way out. It's like doing nether travel in Minecraft, so you can shorten the distance between going to areas. So long as the Emperor is alive and being fed 1,000 people a day to stay alive, you can do that. The moment he dies, interstellar travel's gone for all of humanity. You're so boned. Now, since the Horus heresy 10,000 years ago, the Imperium has fallen from grace substantially. All technology has started to dwindle and die. There is now giant fundamental religious extremists that now believe the Emperor of Mankind was a deity, a true living god, which is probably the last thing the Emperor would have wanted to be remembered for. So now you have this thing called the Ecclesiarchy, which is this giant church entirely devoted to spreading the good word of the Emperor.
It's a hell of a cool building.
He is now the Holy Emperor God, the God Emperor of mankind, and all of the Imperium has taken up worshiping him to the fullest extent and killing anything that isn't humanity in his name. The Imperium has this futuristic gothic tone to it and a hefty religious zealotry. Futuristic
This has gotta be one of the coolest pieces of artwork I have seen in the entirety of Warhammer. Like looking at the detail and the scale of this, it is one of the coolest pictures I think I have seen. I've seen it in passing, but I've never just like stopped and stared at it. It is jaw-dropping, the level of detail. You ever watch Berserk, or read Berserk rather? Sorry, we don't watch Berserk, but watching Berserk is heresy. But read Berserk, the manga. The detail in the architecture that the creator did is like the highest level of detail, and this reminds me of that.
Gothic tone to it and a hefty religious zealotry to them. If you think anything against the Emperor, that's heresy and you deserve to die. That is called being a heretic. Heretics die in 40K. There is no such thing as freedom of religion. There is no such thing as freedom of speech, so long as you are against the Emperor. There is no such thing as any kind of tolerance. Everyone is a religious zealot. Some more than others. But no matter what, you're preaching that good word. So right now, everyone in humanity is trying to expand their empire across the stars. If you are a heretic, someone who doesn't believe in the Emperor, you are deserving of death. If you believe in the Chaos Gods, you are also a heretic and you deserve death. If you are an alien race of any kind, you are a filthy Xenos and you deserve death as well. So long as the murder continues and humanity expands, the Imperium of Man is very, very happy. However, the largest fighting force of this Imperium is my personal favorite faction, and the first faction we will discuss, the Astra Militarum, or also known as the Imperial Guard.
Pretty shit now, man. You finished? That's it, man. Game over, man.
The Imperial Guard is the main fighting force of the Imperium, and in a world of horrifying creatures, galactic monstrosities, the literal demons themselves breaking through the fabric of time to kill you, the Imperial Guard are untold billions of regular men and women wearing modern day like flak armor with a laser rifle.
I saw the most wild take too on Yura's video where she was watching Warhammer, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sad there's no Skaven," and people are all like, "Yeah, humanity is the Skaven of Warhammer 40K." It's such an insane statement, and I love it.
This is the humble las gun, the main weapon of the Imperial Guard. It fires superheated plasma lasers at an extremely fast fire rate. It is reliable, never jams. It can blow off limbs, giant holes in concrete. It is overall an extremely devastating weapon in modern day. It is one of the weakest in the 40K universe. Yeah, a laser rifle that never jams, it could blow off limbs, one of the weakest weapons. That's the world we're in right now. But who cares? Because the Imperial Guard has, in each battle, 500,000 of these men and women. 30,000 large armored tanks, 10,000 artillery batteries. The Imperial Guard wins through sheer numbers and firepower. They kind of have this World War I, World War II style aesthetic with legions of guardsmen as well as high company commanders and generals on the field along with them, and multiple kinds of troops. A normal Imperial Guard battle starts off with artillery, long lines of artillery, cracking the crust of the planet underneath the enemy's feet.
There too.
And as this barrage continues, hundreds of thousands of guardsmen, a sea of guardsmen surges forward, firing and charging at everything possible while the planet rumbles as tanks roll up behind them. Gunships block out the sun and tanks block out the dirt with the steps and hoof prints of millions of guards.
This is
It is
wild.
through numbers
It's wild when you think of the
and
scale.
sheer sundering firepower. They are the first and last line of defense for the Imperium and make up a huge bulk of the battles. The Imperial Guard is also made up of tons of different kinds of regiments. The Catachan jungle fighters live in a death world that's more hospitable than almost any firefight they'll ever get into. So they just have this steroid-looking giant knife Rambo predator.
Wait, is he saying that Catachan's better than the battlefield? I feel like it's a lot worse than the battlefield. He just said that it's better than any battlefield they would ever go to. I feel like he made a slip up with what he was saying there. I don't think brain control leaves are gonna be better than what they would face on a battlefield. I think I could be wrong. I think he made a little slip up.
They're looking sons of bitches. Where
Yeah, he
nothing
misspoke.
is
That's what I
anywhere
thought.
near as scary as a simple night on their home planet. You have the Valhallan winter soldiers who haven't felt their toes in 300 years, the Mordian Iron Guard who are more interested in making their shoes shine than actually fighting a battle, and then of course the big one, the Cadians from Cadia. The biggest export of guardsmen in the entirety of the Imperium. You will fire your first gun at 5. You will disassemble and reassemble it at 10. You will have pounding artillery drills day in and day out at 15. And you'll fight your first Swarm Lord at 16. And if you mention Cadia...
My favorite joke about the Cadians now is just how can you tell a Cadian soldier? Because he'll tell you.
You will burst into an unrelenting amount of tears and sadness like I do daily. To quote, I have at my command an entire battle group of the Imperial Guard, 50 regiments including specialized drop troops, stealthers, mechanized formations, armored companies, combat engineers, and mobile artillery. Over 500,000 fighting men and 30,000 tanks and artillery pieces are mine to command. Emperor, show mercy to the fool that stands against me, for I shall not. The Imperial Guard are my person.
I'm sorry. Cadians are vegans. Cadians are CrossFit vegans. Yes, they are in fact CrossFit vegans. They will let you know that they are a Cadian soldier.
Personal favorite faction in 40K. They're the army I collect the most, the ones I enjoy playing the most, and the one I enjoy in the lore sense a lot. There's something about just a regular man with a laser rifle being told to charge the horrors of this universe and willingly doing so for his god emperor. It's just poetic. They actually represent the main Imperial Guard tactics pretty well. Large amounts of artillery that doesn't require a line of sight, lots of tanks, tons of infantry, drop troops, and gunships. Overall, they're pretty similar to how they sound, though a little bit expensive to collect, unfortunately. And they don't hit a lot. They have a bit of a bad aim, but you don't really care because you're just drowning them in shots. However, if you want more accurate fire and specialization, we can move on to talk about Space Marines.
The Angels of Death.
The Angels of Death are up next. Space Marines are genetically engineered super soldiers and superhumans. They're given extra organs, their skin tissue is toughened, their bones are stronger, they're taller than the average person. They're pretty massive people, and these are the specialized super soldiers that carry out a lot of the more specific tasks for the Imperium. And there's tons of legions of them. In fact, there's one per Primarch. Each Primarch, the Emperor's son, as I mentioned before, oversees their legion of Space Marines. The genetic upgrade they get is based on the genes of said Primarch. It's something called a gene seed. That's what brings them up to this like superhuman level. As stated,
Sorry, what the hell is an osmedulla? I know it's probably something with the brain. What the hell is the osmedulla? I have not seen that organ before.
Each Primarch has their own legion. Roboute Guilliman has the Ultramarines, Jagatai Khan has the White Scars, Rogel Dorn has the Imperial Fists, Corvus Corax has the Raven Guard, and there's a whole bunch of other side sections that are also extremely interesting and have a little bit more of a twist on the average Space Marines, which we will discuss in a bit. Humorously enough, I don't have a whole lot to say about Space Marines. They're superhumanly fast. In fact, it's been said that nothing that large should move that quick. These men in power armor moving at blazing fast speeds, their reflexes are faster, their skin is tougher. They are overall just extremely powerful soldiers. In fact, where they differ comes down to which Space Marine Legion we're talking about. For instance, the Ultramarines done by Roboute Guilliman are the main blue boys, strong in almost every way, the jack of all trades kind of group that are a little bit too strong, and that's a lore problem, but the White Scars by Jagatai Khan are all about speed freaks, go fast. We're talking attack bikes, we're talking land speeders. You want to go in quick, you want to hit them hard, you want them to be swarming around like buzzflies. Buzzsaws. With the speed of buzzsaws. Fuck you, Pale King. Salamanders love fire. Fire in the forge, fire in battle. Flamers, melta-guns, multi-meltas. Just so long as something can be burning, that's big. And they're also actually some of the nicest of the Space Marines. A lot of Space Marines have this kind of like holier-than-thou thing because of their genetic strength. However, the Salamanders tend to put human lives above the lives of themselves, which is actually rather rare. They're also all black, but not like just regular black, like 2 a.m. line at a White Castle black. Like they have a...
That's like the first time I've ever heard it addressed in any video. I'm just saying.
Charcoal, dark, ashy exterior, and blazing red eyes. Apparently something about living on their home planet of Nocturne, which I don't know if that makes much sense, but who cares? This is like fantasy land anyway. Overall, Salamanders are actually one of my personal favorite legions because they're just really cool. They're fun to play as because of all their flamer weapons, and they have a nice, like, more heartwarming lore as opposed to being super evil like everyone else is. Oh my god, we're not even a quarter of the way through the Space Marine Legions. Imperial Fists believe in the power of the siege and defensive positions. Raven Guards, master of stealth and sabotage while having bird helmets. Iron Hands, masters of machines and vehicles.
And he's Iron Hands!
Really goddamn good at being sold on eBay after one nerf. Space Wolves, Vikings and wolves and tons of wolves and axes, battle axes, fur everywhere. Space Wolves, angry, big teeth, blood Angels, the genetic defect to make them want to drink blood and go crazy called the Red Thirst. They have Cupid wings and stuff, which is a little bit strange, and they are all super gay for Sanguinius. Dark Angels are old school knights and inner circle theme and...
Look, who isn't gay for Sanguinius? Come on.
Heretic?
Me? No, never. Once from a little moon, I know.
Death Watch, a fancy anti-Xenos group that nobody plays because Death Watch, and they look cool though, but no one plays them. I don't know about Death Watch. They're there though. Black Templars for the people who, if you haven't prayed at least 3 times a day, you're gonna start praying out that airlock. And I'm sure there's some other chapters I may have missed as well, like Crimson Fist and stuff. But those are the main ones right here. Here. Quote.
You missed a bunch.
The Emperor himself. They shall be my finest warriors.
He missed a bunch.
These men who give of themselves to me. Like clay I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war I shall forge them. They shall be of iron will and steely sinew. In great armor I shall clad them, and with the mightiest weapons shall they be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness shall blight them. They shall have such tactics, strategies, and machines that no foe will...
Yeah, no, but the thing is, Penascos is I don't care because Salamander fans have been pricks to me, so I have no problem overtly saying that they are horrendous. That is why. It is not because they are actually the worst thing in the game. It is primarily because Salamander fans, or not Salamander fans specifically, but Vulcan fans were absolute buttheads. So I will be the biggest contrarian in the world because of how unpleasant they were.
Best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are my defenders of humanity. They are my space marines, and they shall know no fear. And on the tabletop, they fuck. Oh, they fuck hard. As of making this video, Space Marines are laughably strong. That might change at some point, but overall, Space Marines just have it's like a Swiss Army.
To be fair, I think the mistakes are completely fair. I think like he's still covering a lot. I still think it's just, I think it's like endearing. It's very much a real fan's attempt at trying to explain this in an abridged way and make it digestible for people. I see why Bricky is perceived as the person to give an opening into the franchise. In fact, I think this is actually an easier entry point than the re-release that he did of this a couple years later, because right now, yes, I understand the stuff he's talking about already, but it's not overwhelming, and I wouldn't see this as overwhelming, especially with how simplified he's made it.
A tool for anything you need, except it's like a gold-plated Swiss Army knife. It is extremely strong. If you are actually getting into the tabletop of Warhammer, Space Marines are a great start. Also, whatever gameplay style you have, whether you want to be sit back with long range and heavy weaponry, go fast and run in, or even just full melee, all of these options are totally there for you. Space Marines are super badass, but unfortunately, it's time we start praying to our new god, the 2011 Honda Civic.
So is it any wonder people are afraid of technology?
Technology! The Adeptus Mechanicus. The Adeptus Mechanicus are a technophile cult on Mars. Now, these people are a little bit weird because they don't actually really believe in the Emperor of Mankind. And you might think, oh, whoa, Berkey, that sounds like some heresy. A little bit. They believe in the Emperor, they believe in his power, but they don't pray to him. They pray to something called the Omnissiah. And the Omnissiah is this kind of machine god that they believe permeates in all machines. And if you think, well, wait a minute, they believe in a different god as well? That sounds like super heresy. Well, yes-ish, but they also make all your guns, and they make all your tanks, and they make everything that you have, so you can't really tell them to fuck off?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to win nothing if you don't got stuff to shoot people with. See, their Omnissiah at least makes sense from their standpoint. They believe it to be a deity that permeates through all machines. Your Honda Civic, your standard bolt gun, your Dune Strider Walker, your giant mechs, your huge ships. The Omnissiah is present through all. And the only reason your stuff works is because the machine's spirit in it says it works. If you want your gun to work, your tank to run, you must pray to it. And I mean full stop. You need to start chanting in high Gothic. You need to burn incense. You need to sit on your knees and pray to that car. You need to rub oil on your robes, and you need to go ahomina, homina, 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 homina. Full stop. If you want your damn thing to work, if you want your gun to fire, you need to do that. They are very bizarre, and they actually have a bit of a point because it's obviously working. And if you look at them, I don't know how that works.
Oh my
So
God.
they obviously know something about what they're doing. The most notable member of the
Belisarius Caul.
Mechanicus is Magos, whatever. Belisarius Caul. Look at this dude. Look at this dude.
We like him. He's a quirky
Yeah.
guy. And a
This is
hypocrite.
the group we're talking about. These are these weirdos. Here, the Omnissian Creed. The credo, Omnissia. There is no truth in flesh, only betrayal. There is no strength in flesh, only weakness. There is no constancy in flesh, only decay. There is no certainty in flesh, but death. Flesh is weakness. Flesh is death.
You better call
the
Caul.
Messiah is the God of the machines, and if you wish to be whole, if you wish to be holy, if you wish to give unto him, you must saw down your limbs and remove your organs and replace them with mechanical parts, because that is what he wants, and that is how you will become enlightened. Hard technophiles mixed with religious extremism. Dectus Mechanicus.
Yeah.
Now, for their army side of things, they are with the Scutari. The Scutari operate with very bizarre weaponry and lots of different kinds of vehicles, tanks, and different people in between. They're very weird, but they have extremely wacky and enjoyable, and in fact quite effective, both in the real game and in the lore, weaponry and gear. Overall, as an army on the tabletop, they're very weird and have a whole bunch of different shenanigans, but if you like kind of that quirky, wacky techno thing, I'd give them a pickup. Hell, they're so paranoid. I gotta keep going. They're so paranoid and crazy. These Dune Striders you see right here, one guy was able to make them work. One guy, and he died. And they're so scared they'll never work again that they keep them on and they never turn them off, and they run around in a circle the whole time until they need them, and then they corral it.
Wait,
and go to battle.
what?
Yep. The Adeptus Mechanicus.
That's amazing.
Now, if you want
I
to talk
didn't know
about
that.
faith, though, let's talk about the Sisters of Battle.
A simp has fallen for an eagle in Lego City.
The Sisters of Battle of the Adeptus Sororitas, if that's how I pronounce it correctly, is an all-female group of battle sisters going through the ecclesiarchy section of the Imperium. The ecclesiarchy is, of course, the church. This is, imagine a private army of the church, which is scary. And it is. The sisters are an
Oh, sorry. Just one last thing. Well, not last thing. I'll probably pause this like another 40 million times. To everybody who is part of the Patreon, you guys got to let me know. I'll probably do a poll this week, as long as the algorithm fixes. Hopefully it fixes. About what we're going to do for the next poster. I'm going to assume, knowing you guys, Sisters of Battle wins. I'm going to assume Sisters of Battle art wins, but we'll see.
extremely zealotous force, and they take this to a full extreme. They believe in three main things: faith, martyrdom, and fire. Through the bolter, the flamer, and the melta, the Sisters of Battle are extremely potent at taking out chaos and heretics. Mainly heretics, because as they are a fighting section of the ecclesiarchy church, that's the big thing they want to kill. Any form of heretic will face the Emperor's justice through those three main weapons: the bolter, the flamer, and the melta, and they will do so with extreme prejudice. Literally. They are the closest things we have to nuns in space, and I'm talking hardcore nuns. They carry holy fire on their backs. They have holy books and sigils all across their armor. Their main battle tank is a fucking pipe organ missile launcher. They have small babies that they have removed their brain capacity to make them little servant cherubs to fly around and give them ammunition and shit. They drop churches.
Wait, weren't the cherubs like VAT created? Aren't the cherubs manufactured? I didn't think they went around collecting babies. I thought, again, I know that there's going to be inconsistencies, right? But I just want to make sure I'm not wrong on that one. I thought that they were I thought the cherubs were manufactured. I love the sassy AI chips. Oh, AI ships. Okay, yeah.
From low orbit, as mini drop pods onto battles, they drop churches into battles, and they blare war hymns and holy music from their frigates in low atmosphere and shower holy water across the battlefield. These are the people you are dealing with, and they're fucking awesome. They can literally stave off demons on the tabletop because their faith is that strong. Remember the warp, the demons from the warp? Well, the warp also manifests in your mind. All of your emotions, negative and positive, go through the warp.
Celestine's technically a demon,
the
right?
place of all things. So if you are that mentally fortified, that mentally strong, you can stave off horrifying demons. And all these girls, oh, not a crack. Not a crack in that mental armor. Now, as much as a meme as they are, and as much as their models look a lot like Ongo Gabloglian, yeah, which I can't unsee anymore. I gotta say,
their models are terrible.
love
It's the only
their
reason I don't
design.
like them.
I think they're extremely cool. They're another army that
They're the only set, because I like collecting the actual miniatures, right? Like from Games Workshop. It's a weird thing. I know first party shit is really ingrained in my head. I know some people think that's crazy, but that's how I am. They're the one exception to that. I would absolutely get a proxy version of them that has a non-heinous looking face, because they're such cool models if they have helmets on, but they're pretty, so I'd rather them not have helmets. So I'm left in a really tough spot here, because I would legitimately have the pipe organ missile launcher on one of my shelves with a couple of Sisters of Battle. I think that would look sick next to my Arcs of Omen setup. I would like that, but no, I don't get that. I have to have ugly, freaking terrible minis.
I'm currently collecting. They just released a whole new line of figures very recently, and they look wonderful. Everything from Celestine, the living, literally undying saint from the Triumph of Saint Catherine, which is literally a funeral procession as a model. Those organ tanks I mentioned earlier. This shit is the most over-the-top badassery in a lot of the Warhammer universe, and goddamn it, is it over the top. But Sisters of Battle are so cool. While I'm a guardsman at heart, oh, this is such a cool faction.
I will say this, like you're saying, you can paint however you want. I've painted, and I've also had commission painted pieces. To be able, I've only seen like one or two people paint good looking faces on the models that they have for the sisters. Like their faces are so jank. It's like it's like when you see a woman catfish you with like really god tier makeup and she takes it off and she is the most heinous thing underneath it. It is the same thing with like somebody who's capable of painting a Sisters of Battle face. It is a very, very rare unicorn artist who can make those models not look ugly.
By Bolter Shell, Flamer Burst, and Melta Blast, the mutant, the heretic, and the traitor alike are cleansed of their sin of existence. So it has been for 5 millennia, so shall it be until the end of time. And speaking of burning demons,
I can see!
Oh, the Grey Knights. Everybody says how they're lame.
the
They're
first
so cool.
army I actually collected.
All right, wait. Before this even goes into this, the Grey Knights are one of those ones. I know they're constantly shit in the lore, right? Like the lack of information about them. Is that what it was? And the few chances that we do get to see them, they're not that useful. But I feel like they're so cool looking.
Back in 7th edition. The Grey Knights are a super secretive and much more old school look at power armored knights, except they are all psychers. All of them have that crazy space magic magician shit. For every 100,000 guardsmen, there's one Grey Knight. For every 10,000 Sisters of Battle, there's one Grey Knight. For every 1,000 Space Marines, there's one Grey Knight. Grey Knights are the strongest of the strong, both in mental will and absolute just strength. These are Space Marines that are all high-level psychers, all of them able to specifically do one goal, and that is kill demons. The Emperor believed that the demons of chaos were the #1 threat to the Imperium, and he probably is right. However, this group is entirely based on doing that through a myriad of tactics. Coming from the planet, or I guess the moon of Titan in the Sol system, the Grey Knights are thrown through extremely rigorous training and are as clear of mind and soul as they possibly can be.
Whose
Since the
gene seed do they
demons
have?
of the warp are the warp and your mind projects to the warp, people can go insane very fast, especially lower level psychers. These Grey Knights need to be able to harness the warp in the presence of demons and stay perfectly sane. One of their characters, one of my favorite characters, is named Castellan Crow. He has a demon blade, the black blade of Muhammad.
Oh, just the Emperor's kind of?
And he has to have it on him because it tempts everyone nearby, constantly beckoning them. Use my power, use my strength, suck my penis, whatever the possibility. And so he has to keep it on him all the time as this thing whispers to him consistently, and he has to stave it off forever, being alone in his chambers or on the battlefield, because anyone who gets too close to it might be tempted a little too hard. He is that pure of heart and mind, and all the characters in the Grey Knights are basically like that. The only issue is that
Why not just dig a
Grey
really
Knights have
deep
a
hole?
scorched earth policy, more ways than one. If they're fighting
Slaneshi blades are almost like, it's something that I thought of before too. That Slaneshi blades and cursed weapons in general in the Warhammer universe make almost no sense to me, because I feel like they have the technology to destroy these weapons. I really do. I really do. Not only that, you could literally just throw it into the deep expanse of space. No one's gonna go find a little artifact free floating in the vacuum of space. You know? I don't think you have to worry about someone getting corrupted by a demon sword that is floating literally in the black void. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
demons corrupt and make people crazy. So if I'm a guardsman and I'm fighting demons and the Grey Knights arrive,
Oh my god,
kill the
Ishizoku
demons,
reviewers. Actually a good
I'm
anime.
a risk. And so guess who's not making it out of there? On the tabletop, they're very strike fast, strike hard kind of people. They teleport all around the place. They are fast strike groups.
Yeah, throw it to the
Small
star.
amounts of models because they're so dang strong. You only have so many characters, but with it, you get in there, you're very tough, very tanky, you hit really hard, and you try to bounce around the battlefield quickly, but you don't have numbers, and so every dead Grey Knight hits really damn hard. They're fun, though, if you like that kind of fast-striking kind of army. Oh, and also, Kaldor Drago is a thing. We're not even going to get into Kaldor Drago. All right, that is, oh my goodness gracious. I am the hammer. I am the mail about his fist. I am the spear in his hand. Though we are lost, I am the shield on his arm. I am the flight of his arrows. I am the hammer. I am the sword. I am the shield. I am a sword.
Wait. The thing is, the demon inside can guide the blade back to a planet or a spaceship, and destroying it releases the demon back into the warp. If it has that kind of force, then why can't it just like whip itself off of somebody's belt then? And then I will reiterate my original idea. Put it in a really deep hole. Fill the hole up with molten metal. Leave it there. Entomb it. No one's going to go digging it up. No one's going to dig it up if it's a mile deep hole filled with metal. To go get a sword that's whispering sweet nothings into your ear. You know, the e-girl blade is not worth it.
Soldier at the battle at the end of time. Grey Knights are pretty hardcore. They are as holy as you can get for a Space Marine. If you like Space Marines and you want to, you know that they're holy enough, you want to be holier?
Yeah.
Grey Knights.
Ooh.
Now, if you want to be holier and big, let's talk Imperial Knights.
Ooh.
Lord, he coming!
Do you
We love our
like
Imperial Knights.
gigantic walkers the size of homes or medium-sized buildings? Do you want to...
All right, pause it again. The Mechanicus would not dig it up because it's not technology. They would just leave it alone because it's a stinky little sword.
kill heretics, but you want to kill like 40 of them per turn? Do you want a gigantic...
Sorry. Putting a Slaneshi blade in a hole is exactly what it wants. Think Tetra, damn it. You fell for my ploy, mortal. I wanted you to do this for Slanesh. She who thirsts needs the blade in the hole.
old school knight noble house style of walkers with giant chainsaw arms, then you got Imperial Knights. Imperial Knights, it's not a whole lot to talk about.
That one's
though,
pretty cool. I haven't
because
seen
they're
that
just gigantic walkers, but they have this old school like house feel to them. Like literally like they're houses. Each Imperial Knight comes from a house, and each of them act in their own special way. These behemoth of walkers also destroy almost everything in their path, killing full swaths of squads in a couple shots.
Ooh, that's the one I
legions
have.
of troops. Like,
That's
these
that's the one I
things
have.
do
The
not
Imperial
mess around.
House Raven.
And they look so cool. Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights, actually, for that matter, don't have a whole lot to discuss. They're just super big, heavy walkers, and they look different depending on your house or chaos god you currently believe in. And overall, these things are just really cool if you want to murder everything in your path. They're the big, scary, big unit of Warhammer, and if you want to collect them, go to town. They make for a great painting project, too. Getting more back down to earth, let's talk something about a little bit different, a little more gold.
Oh, the custodians.
If guardsmen are regular soldiers, space marines are super soldiers, Grey Knights are super soldiers, the Adeptus Custodes are super soldiers cubed. The
They're
Adeptus
super duper
Custodes
soldiers.
are the third major army I own. I know, 3 armies. I know, I got carried away, okay? But that's all. I only have 3, okay? They are our final brand of Space Marines, but these ones are super special. Okay, if a guardsman is 6 foot, a space marine is 7 feet, a custodian is 8 feet. These are the giant defenders of
They're the
Holy
Alpha
Terra,
Chads.
which is also Earth. Earth is Terra. Earth, Terra. Themselves. These are the people that literally guard the Emperor's throne room. Hence, custodes. These boys protect the Emperor's
I'm like not
throne
even
room
surprised.
at all times, and are
Like, I'm not even surprised that Bricky likes Custodes. He strikes me very much as a Custodes enjoyer, right? In the same vibe that, like, I'm not surprised that Henry Cavill plays Custodes. It just, to me, it's kind of funny.
literally like handcrafted people. They're not humans brought up by a gene seer or something. These are all handcrafted super soldiers. I think from a tube. These behemoth of men are like 8 feet, 8.5 feet tall, and functionally immortal. They stand still, spear in hand, for hundreds of years without the need to sleep and barely even the need to eat, watching over the throne room and every other area of Holy Terra for their entire purpose in life. And oh my lord, are they terrifying. These custodians put Space Marines to shame. If you liked your super soldiers, these are your super mega soldiers. One of these men can take on probably 3 Space Marines and most likely win. Ooh. There are many different groups of custodians as well, like the Solar Watch, or there's also one of my personal favorite, the Aquilan Shield. The Aquilan Shield go out to seemingly unimportant individuals.
So there's only 10,000 custodians though, right? Like how many are in each segment? Regiment.
And protect them because they believe that they are going to be doing something very important in their lives. For instance, let's say a regular guardsman gets the protection of this giant 8.5 foot tall golden god because that guardsman will end up becoming a general one day or something of that nature. The custodians work in mysterious ways and are almost always outnumbered but never outmatched. These people are pretty horrifying.
Yeah, the Harlequins can beat
both
them, right?
on the tabletop as well as in the lore. There are very few of them, however, and there's
cool
actually an extremely small amount of them. But that's kind of the point. There's only so many of these people that can have war gear this strong, weapons this powerful, and training this good. And the custodians have all 3 of it.
That legitimately is probably a tournament-winning paint job. That legitimately looks like a tournament-winning paint job. That is one of the cleanest paint jobs I've seen. It is gorgeous.
For 100 years, I stood my watch amidst the somber shadows of the Sanctum Imperialis. I was still as a statue, but always ready, always attuned to dangers unseen. Days, months, years passed by in a frenzied blur beyond those walls, yet within, little moved and nothing changed. For 100 years, I did not but wait, yet had any threat appeared, I would have struck it down in a heartbeat. For 100 years, I stood my watch, and as it ends, I can tell you this, patience is a weapon. The custodians are the top dogs of the Imperium, and they hurt just that same way. Though I do want to discuss a little bit about the Sisters of Silence before we get out of here, because the Sisters of Silence I also have a few of, and they're really fun, but they don't get enough attention. These kind of bald plume.
I'm just saying this now. The Sisters of Silence would not have been forgotten and become this huge controversial topic if they didn't make them fucking bald with ponytails. I'm just saying that now. Their designs are absolutely peak until you get to the scalp. It does not look good. It's a horrible aesthetic, and that is 100% why they get forgotten.
Ladies are a whole group of pariahs, or also known as blanks. We'll be referring to them as blanks from now on. So as every mind is somewhat connected to the warp, these blanks are a genetic mutation that has it suppressed heavily. Because of that mind suppression, normal people feel this weird, like, uncomfortable nature when around them. When a Sister of Silence walks past them, you feel ill. You feel just uncomfortable and strange. So most of them don't actually live past childhood, because once they are birthed, they're, well, you know, killed or something at a very young age, because they just emit a horrifying aura. These ladies, however, are guardians of the throne as well for more psychic threats. See, none of the custodians are psychers, so they have a difficult time dealing with major demons and other kinds of psychic phenomena. These sisters are extremely specialized in it, all of them taking a vow of silence as they don't speak, hence the term Sisters of Silence, but they communicate through hand gestures and things of that nature. But if there's a demon issue, if there's any kind of warp-based problem, the sisters are extremely adept at dealing with them, thanks to their blank gene. They normally work a lot of time with the custodians because they have to deal with both kinds of threats, but they're not represented that way on the tabletop. In fact, they only have like one real model for them, which is very unfortunate. I hope they'll get some like news soon, because I think they should really be working together
5 years.
as it is that way in the lore, but hopefully we'll get there soon. But if we're talking about blanks, let's talk assassins.
My precious power ring, gone forever.
It's been a long video. We're about to round it out. We got this and one more human thing, and then we're done. The assassins, though, the Officio Assassinorum, oh boy, these people are deadly. Yeah, they're called assassins. They should be, but these people will mess you up. So these are from the Officio Assassinorum, a very special organization, and they are handpicked by the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum from the what was it called? Schola Progenium. It's basically an orphan school. Your parents got murdered by demons or something, you get sent to this and you get trained to be whatever. Tempestus drop troop, an inquisitor, maybe even. Maybe you get a blank gene and you get thrown into the Sisters of Silence, or sometimes you just disappear. When you are taken, however, you go to one of 4 temples, because the Assassinorum works in the temple style of things. These temples are the Vindicare, Caluxus, Calidus, and Eversor temples. Let's start with the Vindicare. I'm far away. I've been sitting here for 3 weeks. Poof! The Vindicare temple is the main sniper-based temple. Gigantic sniper rifles for all these assassins. Their whole point is to be able to...
Wait, hang on. They all talk about how the Harlequins killed a bunch of custodians, but they never mentioned that it was the same series that featured orc diplomats. Orc diplomats. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
To be in a spot and sit there, eye and scope, for weeks, waiting for their perfect target, taking people out from literal miles away after extremely long time periods. The Vindicare Temple is about precise, perfect aim. There have been reports of Vindicares being able to single out particular body parts from over 2-3 miles away.
Damn.
Temples in the head, the jugular, for instance, and been sitting there after weeks. And when they're ready, take that shot, time is done, packs them up. The Calidus Temple, however, is a lot more about shape-shifting and deviant. It's mostly a female-based one, or at least it seems to be, and this allows a lot of...
Now this is the order that killed Conrad Kurz, right? This particular order?
Body augmentation for certain individuals to be able to kind of transmorph themselves and infiltrate areas that are problems. These assassins will end up taking missions that take them years, 2-3 years, to infiltrate a heretical group and slowly work their way up, just to get enough time to put a bullet into the main target's head and then escape unharmed. Or become the main target and sabotage it from within. These are all completely about deception, mind tricks, polymorphing, and everything in between. And lots of drawings. The Eversor Temple. Just kind of disturbing one. The Eversor Temple is about when you don't want anything to come back alive, friend or foe. You want it all dead. An Eversor is psychogenically conditioned with just psychotherapy and psychological torture to only feel violence, hatred, and anger. It does the Clockwork Orange style of thing of just making you forced to watch never-ending pain and misery and psycho conditioning, I guess is the term. And then they pump you full of tons of psychedelic drugs and they cryo-freeze you. And then they drop you in an area where they just want to make sure everything is dead.
That is the single greatest thing I have learned in this entire video. I didn't know that this faction exists, and I unironically think that's amazing.
And then you defrost.
They're cracked up rage fiends!
Just all this insane, mind-boggling psychotherapy and psychedelic drugs, and you just go to town. Yeah, if you don't care if anyone comes back alive. You're like, all right, lost cause, send them in. Finally, there's the most bizarre temple, the Caluxus Temple. The Caluxus assassins are feared even among the other temples. So that blank gene, the people will go to the Caluxus Temple with this as well. And this is where they can harness that to be massively anti-psyker or even just anti-regular people. They're seen with extreme fear and distrust among many, many people. They're described by the Eldar by quote as being pure evil. Imagine that uncomfortable feeling from that blank gene I mentioned, and then imagine them being taught and given equipment to amplify it by 100. If normally regular people feel uncomfortable,
that would not be
now
good for them.
they are basically akin to being a siren wailing directly in your ear. And if you're a psyker, oh no. The sheer presence of a Caluxus assassin is enough for you to tear your skin off. You will rather gouge your eyes out and rip your nails off than even being near this person. The Caluxus assassin is when you want psychers to literally lose their minds, and they will go on their knees and ask you to gun them down because it is a suitable choice over being anywhere near you. The motto of that temple is, "That which is unknown and unseen commands the greatest fear." Now, for the tabletop, assassins aren't that special. You can call them in no matter what Imperium faction you are, and they do a lot of work for themselves, but at the same time, they're very specialized and require a lot of finesse. And they work the way you generally want them to, though. You want to cause some distortion and weird stuff, you take a Calidus. You want to just murder swaths of infantry and then blow up Eversor. You want to kill that one guy, Vindicare, and if you have a lot of psychers, Caluxus. It's a nice little, like, jack of all trades if you have a specific thing you want to kill. And you get to choose which is really fun. But now, let's talk about the last human faction.
Playing as the shapeshifter one, I can imagine, I'm sure they don't do it this way on the tabletop, but wouldn't it be really cool if, like, you have to write on a piece of paper and you have to pick one of your enemy's base units and you replace them, and, like, they don't know which one it is. So, like, the entire time you are actively watching that unit, even though they don't realize that that unit that they're moving forward is actually yours. I think that'd be kind of cool.
We can round this video out before we do part 2. The Inquisition.
Oh boy.
And we have a lot to talk about with them.
On the subject of heresy!
Oh boy. Where do I even begin with the Inquisition? Take every secret police you can think of. The KGB, the Gestapo, the CIA, FBI, any of these kinds of people. And then mark it up by about 10 and give them the most power in the entire Imperium. No, you know what? How about this? This right here, it's not just a quote. This is the Imperial motto, the motto of the Inquisition. I apologize for my bad pronunciation. Innocentia nihil probat. Innocence proves nothing. The most powerful organization in...
Well, now I know the Latin from Elden Ring, because I swear to God, I as soon as I saw nihil, I thought of Morgoth, right? So I think of nihil, nihil, nihil. Sorry. Well, now it's nothing, right? So just random little thing.
The Imperium, the secret police, their #1 motto is innocence proves nothing. The Inquisition goes around like the secret police or like detectives to find issues in the Imperium. And they have different ordos depending on which one we're talking about. The Ordo Hereticus, the Ordo Xenos, the Ordo Malleus, for instance, and a whole bunch of other ones. Hereticus is obvious, they deal with heretics. Xenos tries to find alien threats, and Malleus is demons. They all have different specializations in what they're trying to go for as this Inquisitor. And that's what they're called, Inquisitors. Each of them, as an Inquisitor, has their own free reign to do as they wish. They may have a ship and a crew, and they go out to find problems and interrogate people a lot. They are above
the best life
law
in the Imperium.
in every department over Space Marines. Now, the Space Marines might argue against them and stuff, and there might be a lot of blowback, but technically they are above them as Inquisitors. They are looking to investigate and figure out coups and cults and demonic incursions and possible Xenos issues like gene stealers or a new threat coming into an area. They're about learning that stuff and actually doing detective work. And memes aside, they're pretty good at it. The Inquisition having all of this power does make them a little bit power hungry and frantic sometimes. And yes, it is still a bad thing, but most of them are pretty good at their job. And they spend a lot of time being very diligent to make sure that all of these leads they follow are proper and correct. They're basically space detectives with just enormous power,
right,
and sometimes a bit of a power complex. And we haven't even talked about Exterminatus yet. Exterminatus is deeming a planet unfit to be saved. I deem that this planet is demon infested, and taking it back will cost too many resources and is not worth it. I have now committed Exterminatus on this planet.
God.
I will now sign the death warrant of an entire Imperium planet, as it is unfit to take and better to be destroyed than allow the enemy to hold it. This can mean saturation bombardment. This can mean cracking the planet's core and breaking it apart. Doesn't matter. Render this planet inhospitable to all life.
I love it every time it's explained.
Innocence proves nothing people are the only people who can choose this planet must die in its entirety. Yeah, you're playing the villain. Now, it is mean a lot, but most Inquisitors are very rare to do Exterminatus. Exterminatus is a very crazy thing. There's only so many worlds that you don't want to destroy all of them. Now, naturally, with the memes aside, there are some people who are a little bit rough on this one. But most Inquisitors generally don't like to do Exterminatus a ton, but it is an option they have. And it's a crazy option when you think about it. Secret Police Inquisition are unfortunately not represented on the tabletop very much. You generally kind of put one in your army if you feel like it. You have a couple special options there and some side content, but they're not really fleshed out very well, and personally they need a lot more stuff put in there, and they really need a lot more effort put into them, and they're not quite where I want them to be. Overall, the Inquisition makes for a lot of the best storytelling as well, because it's a little bit hard to talk about a big story of a whole bunch of Space Marines killing something, right? It's just a big battle story. It's not as interesting. Having that intrigue and that moral dilemma that an Inquisitor has makes for a lot better media. And honestly, the more people do it, I think it's better, because then it adds a little more humanity to the Warhammer horrible, horrible grimdarkness. And wow, we just finished the humans, all right? Come back for part 2 when we talk about Chaos and Xenos, because we got to talk about the 4 Chaos Gods and all the Chaos Marine Legions.
Yay!
And the Tau. And the Necrons,
Tau.
and the Orcs.
Oh boy. And my
boy.
Drakari.
We got a lot. I'll see you in part 2.
Thank you, Bricky. That was great. That was actually great. I honestly thought that I was going to be bored watching it after seeing the remake, thinking that it wouldn't hold up. I think that was really fun. I enjoyed that a lot. Thank you, Bricky. That was great. Redundancy of me saying great, but it was great. As always, thank you for watching, and if you like the content, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. Until next time, welcome to another Warhammer React. We're going to be watching some Crack Duck and see if we can learn anything new about my favorite faction, the Drakari. I mean, what's better than the galaxy's greatest IKEA? Nothing. Enjoy! Alright, we're on the last video for the day. We're going to be finally watching a video by Crack Duck, right? That's how it is. Crack Duck is his name. I've not watched any of his content yet. He was heavily, heavily recommended. And we get to watch about my favorite faction. We get to learn more about the Dark Eldar. So let's go and take a trip to the best IKEA store in the galaxy.
Hi, friends. Today, we're talking about the Dark Eldar.
Yay!
Oh, wait. Hold on a second. go. But yeah, today we're talking about...
Is this how all of his videos go? Like, is this what I'm in for when I watch his videos? Is it like all done through Microsoft Paint? Please tell me it is. Please tell me it's all done through Microsoft Paint. I can't. Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
one of the most, if not the most, depraved elves you'll ever find on these shelves. They're also some of the most elite fighters and the most advanced
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, even his little stick figure Drakari witches are cute.
factions in the entire setting. So, if you like incredibly super edgy, horny elves, then snuggle into your crazy ass skin blanket, grab
Yay!
your cup of evil juice, and let's get into it.
Juice.
Actually, a bad choice of words for these guys, but anyways. The Dark Eldar were formed with the fall of the Eldar Empire. As the Eldar were devoured by Slaanesh, only a few sects of the Eldar were able to survive. One of which were these evil little guys, the Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar survived the Cataclysm, not by avoiding the gross degenerate ways of the Eldar, but by being such degenerates that they made their own city in the Webway to be even more
Yeah, they made their own city with blackjack and hookers, except the blackjack is torture and the hookers are, you know, living furniture. But either way, I love listening to different perspectives of like the origin story of the Drakari. It never gets tiring.
degenerate. They dodged the biggest evil-ass god bullet of all time and were shielded from Slaanesh in the Webway. And seeing how the centuries of depraved decadence and degenerate debauchery of the Eldar had caused the birth of a literal god of excess and brought ruin to their great empire in a mere moment, the Dark Eldar took a deep look at themselves, rethought their life choices, and took a turn for the better, leading a life of altruism and good clean living as they became shining beacons of goodness in the grim darkness of the far future. Nah, just kidding. They made like a prank YouTuber, looked at the consequences and said, want to see me do it again?
Yeah.
And they did the same exact horrible shit that brought ruin to their entire species. In fact, they arguably doubled down since even in the Webway, the Dark Eldar souls were still getting eaten by Slaanesh. But they realized that they could refill their souls in a way by doing acts of evil and absorbing the torments of others.
Is that a car battery strapped to somebody with knives in their head? That is a wild... Huh. His art is really beautiful. I have to say, it really deserves tremendous praise.
Which, luckily for them, was already their favorite pastime, so I guess it's true what they say. Life lessons are for losers.
Yeah.
But, sage wisdom aside, the Dark Eldar are in a way getting punished for their evil doings as they are still constantly feeding Slaanesh and empowering the Dark Prince. They're just acting like
Alright. Soul gets sucked by Slaanesh because of evil depraved ways, elf sad. Do evil depraved things to replenish soul, elf happy. And then soul gets sucked by Slaanesh. You know what? I want that as a shirt. I want that as like a really like obnoxiously cute tank top. I want it to be like pink with like a little bit of frill, and that I need that cycle on it.
refilling bottomless big gulps. So they're caught up in an endless cycle of degeneracy, which is fitting for the addiction allegory of Slaanesh. Plus, in a way, they kind of inherited the thirst of Slaanesh, which fits very well thematically. But yeah, the Dark Eldar survival literally hinges on inflicting pain and torment on others, and let me tell you, they ain't complaining. The Dark Eldar might straight up be the most evil faction in the game. At least some other factions have flimsy delusions justifying their cruelty. The Dark Eldar,
we've learned the
they just kind of really like
even
it.
if it's
So,
fantasy.
in current times, the Dark Eldar have only become more and more depraved. They have a culture of treachery, sadism, narcissism, cruelty, and compassion of any kind is literally stigmatized.
This is slander, okay? They're wonderful people. They're just quirky little furniture salesmen. All right, this is propaganda against them. This is outright lies.
They primarily live in the insano, massive city of Kamara, deep in the Webway. Their capital of Kamara is a conglomeration of all Dark Eldar sectors and cities linked by Webway portals and is said to be the size of a solar system. But thanks to silly Webway magic, its true size is immeasurable and incomprehensibly huge. In Kamra, the Dark Eldar's culture of sadistic villainy festers. And if Obi-Wan thought that Mos Eisley's jizz and zany aliens made it the worst hive of scum and villainy, well, I'd sure hate for him to see the jizz of Kamra's it.
Wait. Did it say that they're called jizz whalers? Jizz is a genre of music. Jizz whalers were musicians who specialized in the genre. Maximilian Rebo were the popular jizz whalers.
Worst hive of scum and villainy, well, I'd sure hate for him to see the jizz of Kamra's aliens. The city is almost exclusively inhabited by evil-ass murderers, slavers, general crazies, and perhaps scariest of all, mega-rich people. Dark Eldar society has many classes from the abused and miserable slaves to the opulent and oppressive nobles. But surprisingly for such an evil-ass society, there is a decent amount of upward mobility between classes, at least for those who can kick ass. Valued above all in Dark Eldar society is combat prowess. The Dark Eldar are even more naturally athletic than the already impressive Eldar. So, of course, they're inhumanly fast, perceptive, cunning, and strong, in addition to being sadistic and vicious. Their reflexes are so great they're said to be able to dodge las shots, which, depending on how you choose to accept las guns as functioning, can range from nutty to faster than...
Just canonically, is that true? Because that's like the first bit of new information that I've heard so far in this video. Because like most of this is all stuff that we already know. I did not know that they were able to dodge a last shot. That is actually a wild thing. Well, then again, I might hear some of this stuff when I read Queen of Knives.
Light and possibly super nutty. However, to be fair, there is a strong argument that their perception helps them recognize a lasgun about to fire and they dodge that, so they don't necessarily have to be faster than light, even with a literal laser lasgun.
Okay.
But also, that would still be incredibly nutty, so I guess the point is I said nutty too many times and I'm gonna stop now. Anyways though, Dark Eldar skin is also said to be almost translucent. However, human skin is translucent,
Sunlight's bad anyway, it's fine.
This leads me to believe that Dark Eldar have some kind of freakish, opaque skin. Ugh. Another quirk they have to differ from their craft-world cousins is that they basically have no psychers, as their psychic abilities were depleted from their souls constantly being sipped on, and using psyker powers would also risk drawing the ire of Slaanesh. But that's hardly a problem, as they have some of the most advanced weapons in the entire setting, since Eldar tech is just generally insane. Some standouts, though, are their dark light weapons, which shoot black hole energy or something, evil-ass blades, which can cut through basically anything, crazy-ass poisons, which can kill basically anything.
Crackdog puts a lot of emphasis on interesting details. The way that he expresses it's definitely a unique twist compared to the other creators I've watched.
And other evil, diabolical things, I bet. But anyways, their emphasis on combat prowess means that even slaves can ascend to the highest classes of Eldar society if they're able to kill and maim their way there. For example, one of the best, if not the best, duelist in 40K, Lilith Hesperax, was once a mere gladiator slave, and currently she has a ton of influence as the leader of the strongest witch cult, the Cult of Strife. Which,
see, it's a meritocracy.
Speaking of witch
We
cults,
love meritocracy
let's talk
here.
about the military groups of the Dark Eldar. And since I already mentioned them, the witch cults are a female order of gladiators who dominate the pits of Kamra and are
witch
also
cults.
mostly beautiful babes, which is surprisingly relevant to their fighting style. They revel in battle and do extravagant flourishes in battle in order to torment their foes. Their fights are so spectacular that the pain of their victims is able to replenish all of the spectators' souls. The witches often fight with very light armor, if any at all, in order to maximize their speed and agility. With that, they can let out a flurry of precise and deadly strikes before most enemies can even process what happened. In addition, they utilize a number of evil-ass poisons and wicked blades. And outside of Kamra, the witch cults utilize their skills from the pits to inflict torment on their enemies across the galaxy.
Why are they killing
Witch
Tau?
cults often conduct raids and are often hired by Dark Eldar forces for their martial talents. And then, next up, the Dark Eldar cabals are essentially crime syndicates and pirate bands, often led by the nobles of Camera called
Vec,
Archons.
right?
These funky fellas are the most prominent subfaction of the
Vec
Dark
runs
Eldar,
the Cabal,
and they're
right?
the primary source of new slaves and materials as they venture into real space to conduct raids. The warriors of the Cabals are the Cabalite warriors, and are elite warriors who can equip themselves with a wide variety of weapons from the Dark Eldar's advanced arsenal. While they're more heavily armored than the Witches, they still value mobility and are relatively lightly armored. Their primary weapons are splinter rifles, which are kinda like Halo Needlers in that it shoots crystal shards. However, instead of homing and exploding, the splinter rifles shoot evil-ass crystals with evil-ass neurotoxins that induce an extremely painful death in their targets. In addition, these rifles are often fitted with monomolecular blades to double as close-quarter weapons. And within their ranks, they're constantly plotting and training to overcome their superiors in order to climb the ranks through treachery and murder. So, it's essentially an army of Starscreams led by bigger Starscreams led by the Megatron. And that Megatron is the ultra insano Lord Archon Astrobel Vect, who is one of the strongest and most influential dudes in the entire setting.
He's just a happy
He'll
little
probably
guy.
get
What do
his
you
own
mean?
video down the line, but some crazy things about him is he claims to have witnessed the fall of the Eldar, created Camera himself, uses little soul-sucking Mr. Terrific balls in battle,
Has
and
soul
he rides
balls.
a little party boat called the Dais of Destruction. But TLDR, he's an insano. And then finally, of the main three, there's the Homunculi Coven. These are perhaps the most depraved of the three, which is saying a lot. These guys are essentially armies of twisted mad scientists and their horrible flesh creations. They specialize in torture and are masters of biotechnology. They take slaves and warriors and IRL kitbash them into abominations, either to act as monstrous units of battle like the Racks and Grotesques, or just for sick kicks like old Talkin' Cherry over there. Hi, I'm Cherry. As in, like a chair, not the fruit. In addition, they're also able to mend grievous wounds and even revive other Dark Eldar through cloning and soul stuff. But along with their flesh abominations, the homunculi use indebted warriors that they brought back from the dead to achieve their sickening ends. And beyond the big three, there's a number of
Okay, but I thought also the when the homunculi are worked with, I thought it was more so of a contractual thing, right? When you leave a piece of your body with them to be brought back, so you pay them, they make money off of it. More so a matter than like them doing evil, nefarious things. It was more so of a contractual like business thing.
Mercenaries and warrior cults. You got the coolest Dark Eldar ever, the Elite Incubi, and these dudes were founded by a former striking Scorpion
Phoenix
Exarch,
Lord.
Ahura, and are the greatest warriors of the Dark Eldar and some of the best, if not the best, in the entire galaxy. They are ultra deadly shock troops and duelists who have the most rigorous and grueling training of all Eldar. To even become an Incubi, aspirants must single-handedly kill an elite aspect warrior. And most importantly, they look sick as hell.
They do.
Which, speaking of sick as hell, we have these scary-looking shift trees.
Oh, it's the mandrakes.
Mandrakes. These dudes are not only scary cannibals, but they're also super cool as they have the power to hop dimensions and emerge from shadows to viciously kill their prey.
That I didn't know.
Their origin is largely unknown, but they're some of the deadliest warriors of the Dark Eldar and highly sought-out assassins. In addition to their iconic glimmer steel blades, they can also channel stolen soul energy into blasts of freezing fire, just like Ultimate Big Chill. Also, these nuttos were actually able to kill Vect. However, it's kind of hinted that he may have let them or even hired them so that he could ascend to Dark Muse, but the lore is intentionally left kind of vague there. And beyond those two, there's a ton of other mercenaries and warriors that don't really need to be mentioned here. But most interesting to me are the funny snake dudes called the Slith.
No, I've not seen the slip.
And like the Craft Worlders, the Dark Eldar generally try to avoid large-scale combat and focus on lightning raids. Their general combat doctrine is to deploy a ton of fast-moving grav vehicles and infantry. Incubi warriors will shoot hails of toxic shards, witches carve up their foes up close, and the homunculi have their abomination steam ham. Most Dark Eldar forces emphasize speed and evasiveness in order to minimize casualties. These raids strike fear in their foes, feeding the Dark Eldar souls as they also score valuable resources and slaves for further tormenting in Kamara. Some Dark Eldar warbands also seek out the strongest foes in the galaxy to face in battle or capture for their gladiatorial pits.
Fair.
And of course for 40k, these lightning raids can often escalate into larger scale battles for cool artworks and such. Also, they've been known to help their Eldar cousins in times
I mean, they've also worked with the Harlequins too, no? Right? Because Harlequins kind of work with everybody.
of dire need, but they're usually weird crazies who the craft worlders try to avoid. But yeah, that's the Dark Eldar. These fellas aren't really my favorite faction, as I usually don't enjoy the crazy depraved villainy of them as much as I like the more Killian spiteful villainy of something like the World Eaters or the Black Legion. I even like the more eldritch horror of the Necrons and Nits. And obviously I love the Orcs, of course, but the Dark Eldar, they do certainly have some fun aspects. Specifically, I really like the Incubi, Witches, and Mandrakes. Plus, they look cool as
those
hell.
are like the three primary
Honestly,
things.
Aesthetically, they're just straight up one of my favorite factions. The body horror stuff isn't really my jam, but the sharp, literally and metaphorically edgy look of the Capelites and other warriors is really cool to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, space pirates are always a cool concept. But let me know what you thought about the Dark Eldar. Are they too edgy? Not edgy enough? Or do you just like hot babes? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and big thanks to the patrons who support the channel. If you want cool time-lapse drawings and other stuff, be sure to check it out. And if you're in the Kazragan tier, you'll get a cool Crack Duck sticker. And
cute.
as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your evil-ass degenerate elves. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey guys, it's your favorite character Cherry again. Thanks for watching the video and whatnot. I just hope that evil fucking vat-grown six-armed son of an artificially inseminated egg rat bastard turns me back into a person again one day.
Oh my god! What a way to end it! Oh my god, I love that! As always, thank you for watching, and if you like the content, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. Until next time!